Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto is the son of Raven Branwen Ruby. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Fpsroxas and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. Raven Branwen has been called many things in her life. A decent and well-balanced mother was not one of them. That wasn't to say she hadn't tried being a good mother. She'd even contemplated leaving behind her tribe just to raise her daughter. But in the end something forced her hand. It wasn't that Raven didn't love her family, even if her feelings for her former husband had diminished somewhat over time, but hard choices had to be made. One such choice came in the form of her daughter's twin brother, who has inherited his father's bright yellow hair and her sharp red eyes. They named him Naruto, after the main character of a book Raven had picked up while at Beacon Academy, and in the beginning everything was borderline perfect. It all began the day the Raven accidentally activated her son's aura, which was something of a tradition within her tribe, and never before had she regretted her actions so much. Taeyang and Yang hadn't been home when it happened. They'd actually been out of town with Raven's brother Crow, and everyone was still alive because of that simple fact. Not only had Naruto aura activated, but so had his semblance, and it was as destructive as it was mighty. Despite being only about a year old, Naruto's semblance had completely destroyed their house and burned some of the surrounding area to a crisp. It was only thanks to Raven's quick reflexes she was able to form a portal and escape before the blast took her along with everything else. She naturally contacted Taeyang a moment later, after teleporting back to the house and making sure that her only son was alright, and that's when everything really did change. Taeyang's first suggestion was to call Ajban, something Raven was already very much against but agreed to nonetheless. Ajban naturally came by to look at the boy, explaining to the two worried parents that the activation of Naruto's semblance at such a young age had led to unleash something he'd never seen before. Taeyang remained optimistic, reassuring Raven that they would do everything in their power to make sure Naruto didn't hurt either himself or anyone else unintentionally. But the raven-haired beauty didn't hear any of it. She didn't hear any of it because all she saw, when she looked at Ajban, was a man planning on how to use her son in a war he had no knowledge of. So it was that night, without ever saying a word to anyone, that Raven took up her old arms and armor and vanished with her son. It was only a week later that Raven appeared once again, this time to her best friend, named Summer, and told her old team leader to take care of her now ex-husband. Summer never claimed to understand what was going on with Raven. She didn't need to, because true friends never need to ask why. So, as Raven took her little boy Naruto to the only place she could raise him properly, and in relative safety, she took a vow that no one would ever use him like Ajban had been planning to. She would train him to be powerful, even more than Raven herself was, so that no one would be able to control him. Then, when the time was right, she would tell her son about the family she had taken him away from. She would tell him how she took him away in the dead of night because his own power put them in danger. Then, after everything was laid bare at his feet, she would ask for his forgiveness. However, until that day comes, Raven would train him. Naruto age 4. Living amongst the Branwen tribe was not for the faint of heart. They were a group of people that valued strength above almost all other attributes, to the point that even their children were expected to be above the norm. So it shouldn't have been a surprise to anyone when Raven decided to take her 4-year-old son out on a hunt, namely for Grim, as a way to show him what he will be expected to face when he becomes of age. So now here Naruto stood, safely up on the hillside, and watched his mother easily rip through the small army of monsters with ease. Yeah, way to go mom, show those monsters who they're messing with, Naruto shouted, pumping his fist into the air with a wide smile on his face, and already imagine what he'll be able to do once he gets big and strong like his mother. I hope you're paying close attention, little Branwen, came a voice from behind Naruto. There's a reason our tribe follows your mother. Her strength is unmatched by all of us here and her dedication is unwavering. You got it, old man Sejiro, and when I grow up I'm going to be even stronger than mom. And then, once I'm leader, the whole world's going to know the name Branwen. We're going to be the strongest tribe ever. Naruto cheered, getting a snort of amusement from the man standing behind him, as Raven finished off the Grim below with a sudden surge of speed. Kid, if you even turn out as half as strong as your mom, you'll be strong enough to have earned my respect. Now come on, let's go down there so she can continue your lesson, Sejiro grunted, motioning Naruto to go forward while pushing on his back just for a little nudge. Naruto just laughed at his guardian, a man tasked by Raven herself to watch over her son whenever she couldn't be around, ever so eager to pester his mother about finally beginning his training. Raven often wondered if this was how Yang was with Taeyang, but those thoughts often led to quick bouts of depression and longing, followed quickly by a large amount of alcohol. It was because of both of their distracted minds that neither son nor mother noticed one last Grim having survived the slaughter. That is until it suddenly lunged at the unaware Naruto. Raven's eyes slowly widened horror as she witnessed such a large beast come down on her small and fragile son. Never before had she felt such helplessness, knowing that she herself was too far away to prevent any harm from coming to Naruto. But that didn't stop the raven-haired warrior from trying. Even Sejiro, who himself was only a few yards away, could only watch on in horror as the large abomination came down on his charge. Both members of the Branwen tribe reached the Grim at the same time, their swords already unsheathed and poised to strike, and they didn't hesitate for a moment. Yet it was Naruto's cries of pain that brought Raven's world crashing down around her, for she had been too slow and the damage was already done. As if some dark and twisted curtain was suddenly lifted from around her son, Raven was greeted by the sight of Naruto holding his face in pain as blood ran down his cheeks. Naruto, Raven began as she slowly knelt down next to her crying son, sword dropped on the ground without a second thought. Naruto, move your hands so I can see what happened. Most children wouldn't have been able to listen, most children would be in too much pain to even think about revealing it to the world. But Naruto was the son of Raven Branwen. So, taking a deep breath and holding back as much of his tears as he could, Naruto slowly pulled his hands away from his face to reveal the damage. 3 long and jagged scars now ran down the side of each of Naruto's cheeks, not deep enough to pierce down into his mouth, but not shallow enough to prevent any permanent scarring. It hurts so much. Naruto choked back a sob, already tasting the iron of his own blood that had dripped into his mouth as he spoke. I know it hurts. I'm so sorry, Naruto. I let my guard down, and you got hurt because of it, Raven whispered as she pulled her sobbing child into her arms. Mommy's here now, it's all going to be alright. Raven, Seijiro began, only to fall silent beneath Raven's harsh glare. Never again, Raven growled out as softly as she could, getting a solemn nod from Seijiro. Come, we should get him back to the tribe and get those injuries looked at. Raven nodded and slowly got back to her feet, sheathing her sword before taking a young and still injured Naruto in her arms, being careful not to rest his face against her armor, and aggravate his injuries even more. Many would believe that Naruto would be out of commission for a few weeks as his face healed, but it was only 1 week after the incident that Naruto walked up to his mother and asked to finally begin his training. Raven could say, with all the pride of a mother, that her son would be strong and ready to face the world that awaits him outside their tribe. Little did anyone know that, just beneath the bandages Naruto now wore on his cheeks, a vile red energy seeped from the cuts and began to slowly burn the flesh until the bleeding stopped. That attack from the Grim had woken up something deep inside Naruto, and no one would ever be prepared for what was going to happen in a few years. Naruto age 9. Naruto's training had started off very simple in those beginning years, mainly consisting of daily exercises and training his mind to be as sharp as the blade he would someday wield. Raven knew full well what damages can be done to the body if extensive training was started too young, so she made sure to teach her son's mind while preparing his body for the intensity it would face in his later years. Now, right as Naruto was on the verge of turning 10 years old, it was decided by the tribe that Naruto would finally undergo the combat portion of his education. Raven herself had undergone something similar around Naruto's age, which showed to everyone just how much promise he had. But that didn't mean it would be easy. Tradition stated that each member of the tribe was to teach Naruto at least one thing about combat, whether it be how to wield a weapon or how to lead an enemy into an ambush. Everyone agreed that Raven should be the one to teach her son the way at the sword. Even Seijiro had relented on that part, and soon enough Naruto knew more ways to kill a man than any other 9-year-old on the face of Remnant. Unfortunately for Naruto, his mother would soon prove to be the hardest teacher he'd ever had. Yet, in the end, Naruto had been gifted with a pair of daggers from his mother, for him to use until he was strong enough and big enough to wield a proper weapon. It was also around this time that Naruto began asking where his father was and who he was, all questions that Raven didn't want to answer. My past is a difficult thing for me to talk about, Naruto, but can't you at least tell me if he's alive? If he even knows that I'm his son, if he even cares that I exist? Naruto asked one late night as they sat in Raven's tent, eating dinner. Raven took a deep breath and closed her eyes, thinking about every possible scenario that could take place after this night, and how her answer would further impact her relationship with her own son. Telling him the truth could possibly be the right thing in the short and long term, but that also ran the risk of Naruto running away one day in search for family he had no idea of. If for no other reason, Naruto would go in search of a twin sister that he had never met before, and had never even thought of. Naruto would hate her for it, when he eventually found out the truth, but she could live with that if it meant keeping him safe until he was ready. For in this deep and dark world, filled with monsters and other nightmarish creatures, Naruto is the only ray of sunshine she still had. Alright, I'll tell you about your father, and why he's not with us now. I used to be something known as a huntress, someone who goes out into the wilds and hunts down Grim, and it was during this time that I met your father. You look a lot like him, same hair color and everything, and the both of you have this shining personality that can just light up a room. I was out on a mission, it lasted maybe only a week, but when I got home I found that Grim had attacked only a few hours before my arrival. Raven took a deep breath as if to center herself once more, and when I rushed inside the house I found your father dead, slumped up against the door to your room. He fought off an entire horde of Grim just to keep you safe until I could get home. Naruto's lowered his gaze to the ground, as if now in deep thought, before his red eyes suddenly shot up to meet Raven's. What was his name? Taeyang. His name was Taeyang. Then I'm proud to be the son of Taeyang and will do everything in my power to live up to both of your names. Raven just smiled down at her son, a smile to hide the pain of lying to him. I know you will, because you are my son. Naruto age 14. Up till this point Raven had kept her word. She trained her son to be strong, loyal, and skilled enough to survive the outside world. Yet it was at this point that Raven's motherly instincts and duty to train her son finally conflicted with one another. Every member of the Branwen tribe was expected to make at least one kill before their 15th birthday, showing the rest of the tribe that they were ready to become one of them and had the will to put the tribe as a whole before their own desires or personal codes. As a mother, Raven did not want to have to force her son to go through with this. But as a member of the Branwen tribe, she had no choice in the matter. Raven knew her son was skilled enough to do it. He had nearly surpassed her strength at that age. But did he have the resolve to take a life that wasn't grim? You know you don't have to leave yet, Raven stated as she helped adjust Naruto's new armor, which was a strange mesh between cloth and metal plating over vital areas. Yes, I do, because the sooner this is over then the sooner I can come back here and help you with the tribe as an equal, Naruto firmly stated, his voice having grown a bit deeper since beginning puberty, and now standing just half a head shorter than Raven herself. When you get back if you need to, I'll be here to talk. Naruto just gave his mother a smile, one that reminded her so much of Taeyang. I'll be strong, I'll make you proud to call me your son by becoming a man of the tribe. Raven watched as Naruto turned around and picked up his 2 daggers, the very same ones she had given him all those years ago, and sheathed them into different holsters on each side of his waist. Then, with a kind of gentleness she only ever seen herself use, she watched Naruto pick up a sword he had crafted all by himself. The sword had a curved blade, much like Raven's own, with hidden notches inside the blade that skillfully covered what it was really capable of. Naruto then took out a mask, a grim mask, and placed it over his face to hide his identity. No one must be allowed to even so much as give out a description of him. Naruto. Yes, mother? Good hunting. And with those last words said between mother and son, Naruto exited Raven's tent and soon enough would exit the area the tribe had settled in for the moment. The nearest town was said to be a very corrupt place, or at least that's what their scouts had told them, and that's why Raven had chosen this place to be her son's proving ground. She knew he wasn't ready to take an innocent life yet, so maybe taking out some drunken murderer would be a good first step in preparing him for what he might have to do some day for the tribe. Inside the town. By the time Naruto had reached in the town the sun was already setting well behind him, its heavenly rays painting the sky in reds and purples, and was a perfect time for him to infiltrate the area without being seen by anyone. Now the trial for his tribe never specified what kind of person he must kill, only that it must be done before his 15th birthday, so at least I gave Naruto some time to figure out which one of these people would be his target. At first Naruto thought this would be a problem, but a part of that changed when he actually began observing the townsfolk. This wasn't a normal town, it was filled with evil given human form, with acts of such depravity taking place that it would forever be engraved into Naruto's very mind. Men and women alike were being forced against their will in the very streets. A pile of corpses had formed in the very center of the town, and those unfortunate enough to still be alive after all of this were being sold in a public slave auction. Why did she choose this place? Naruto asked himself from his hiding spot atop one of the many roofs, struggling to hold his newfound rage at bay. Naruto simply shook his head. It didn't matter why he was here, the fact of the matter was that he is here now, and he can do something about this evil. Sure, his tribe were bandits, that was never kept secret from him, but this is a kind of cruelty not even Grimm are capable of. So Naruto drew the twin daggers from his sides, gripping one in each hand tightly, and jumped down into an alleyway below where a woman was being assaulted. By the time the sun rose the next morning, the only thing left of that town was a burning pile of wreckage, and Raven watched from a distance as her son walked back home covered in the blood of his enemies. Naruto age 16. Sorry mom, Naruto whispered as he stood over Raven's sleeping form, a pack flung over his left shoulder and all his gear on. But something's calling to me out there and I just can't ignore it anymore. Naruto leaned down and kissed her on the forehead before walking out of her tent and simply vanishing into the night. Something out there was calling to him, every night for the last 2 years, and it was about damn time he figured out what it was. Come home. Chapter 2. It had been close to 2 months since Naruto left the Branwen camp, having left in the middle of the night without warning or even so much as an explanation. At first Naruto had expected his mother to come looking for him, since she could open up a portal to anyone she had a close bond with, but to his surprise she never did. Maybe she realized the same thing Naruto did, that he could only ever learn so much held up in camp and that he needed to experience the world to truly understand what it was like to live. So that's what Naruto was doing, exploring the different countries and learning everything he could about the outside world. He of course needed money, that's the only way people survive in these times, so he took up a job doing the one thing he knew he was very good at. Being a mercenary was a lot like it was being a bandit, except being a mercenary allows you to legally kill people while being a bandit was somehow seen as something bad. Still, in the last month or so, Naruto has been able to rack up quite a bit of money and was living quite the simple life on the open road. The country of Vacuo was where Naruto found himself, having hitched a ride on a ship and managed to slip away before anyone notices he was even there. Naruto had only spent a few weeks in one of its coastal cities and in that time he managed to find himself some work protecting an expedition going out into the deserts. Now it wasn't raiders or bandits that these people were worried about. If that was the case and they wouldn't have hired someone experienced in killing monsters, it was because the area of the desert they were going to was notorious for very large grim. So, after packing up on some much-needed supplies and getting some clothes properly made for the desert, Naruto met the expedition at the gates of the city. I'm glad you made it, my new mercenary friend. exclaimed a rather burly-looking man who had a long bushy beard, dull green eyes, and a very over-enthusiastic smile. Well, Ivan, you are paying me quite a bit of money to protect you guys on your expedition, so of course I would make it, Naruto replied, resting his left hand lazily on the hilt of his sword and giving the large man his own smile. Ha ha ha, that's what I like about you, a young man willing to do a hard day's work for a bit of money. Why can't the youth of nowadays be more like you, Mr. Mercenary? Ivan laughed loudly, throwing his large arm around Naruto's shoulder and pulling him in close for a bro hug. Maybe it's because I was raised by a group of bandits and not in a comfy city? Naruto asked dryly, having made no secret his origins and what he had done before becoming a mercenary, and thankfully his tribe never operated in this country before. Yes, but enough of the useless chit-chat. We have treasure to find and, upon our return, a wonderful adventure to tell all the little children, Ivan loudly declared, dragging Naruto with him as he mounted up on one of the transportation vehicles. Naruto should have known this expedition was a bad idea. He met Ivan in a bar after all and the man was half drunk almost all the time, but there was still something about going out into the unknown that made Naruto feel just a bit more alive. Living back in Vale had been nice and all the large forests were perfect for running around in, but there was still so much of the world left to see and Naruto wanted to see it all. Alright everyone, we're about to move out. Remember, if you see any sign of big bad monsters, stay back and let our mercenary friend take care of them. After all, that's what I'm paying him for. Now let's get a move on, Ivan shouted as the engine of their transport roared to life, along with the other ones behind them, and they took off into the wide open desert. It was only about an hour into their trip when Ivan decided to strike up a conversation again, having already drunk half of his flask of alcohol, and now needed something else to distract him from the searing heat. So, with nothing else to do, he started to regale Naruto with tales that this desert held. Now Naruto, being the professional that he is, kept most of his attention looking out for possible threats upon the horizon. It was only when Ivan mentioned the ghost of the desert that Naruto suddenly found himself paying attention. It all began about 10 years ago. This traveling huntress from Vale came into the port one day and wanted to be taken out into the desert. She was apparently on some kind of search for a mysterious artifact lost in the desert, and needed someone to show her the way to a very specific spot. My friend, a woman named Bianca, agreed to take her out into the desert for no small amount of money. It was 4 weeks later, a whole 3 weeks past their return date, that Bianca finally made it back to the city, half dead. She told me that 2 days into their trip they had been attacked by Grimm, but that wasn't the worst part. No, this huntress from Vale had easily dispatched the Grimm with her spear. There was the fact that there was someone working alongside the Grimm. Ivan began, looking out the window with an almost haunted look in his eyes. Someone working alongside the Grimm? Naruto asked, knowing for a fact that Grimm creatures attacked anything and everything that wasn't also Grimm. What did your friend say happened next? She said that the huntress told her to run, and run she did. With their transport trashed, along with all their food and water, Bianca herself barely made it back to the city without dying. She then spent the next 3 weeks recovering and has since refused to ever leave the city again. Wait a minute, you said this was a story about a ghost of the desert, so how does this mysterious ghost fit into the story? Naruto asked, his red eyes glancing out the window at the large dunes of sand. Because it said that huntress's ghost still haunts this desert. Many people to travel through this deserts have claimed to see a white-hooded woman, wielding a spear, traveling through these dunes in the dead of night. Her soul constantly searching for that artifact she had been looking for and that she will never be able to rest until she finds it. Ivan finished with a spooky voice, a slight grin on his face, while in the end Naruto just rolled his eyes. That's a pretty crappy ghost story, Naruto commented dryly, although some part of him did wonder if there was any actual truth to it. That's because it's not a ghost story, at least not in the typical sense, and even I've seen this so-called ghost once or twice. Who knows, maybe on this trip you'll end up seeing her too. The only thing we're likely to run into, this far out, is the Grimm and maybe a few bandits. Besides, I don't imagine that there is any way for someone to survive out here for 10 years. And with that said, their short conversation ended and silence once again filled the vehicle. Night, with the sun finally setting and the broken moon having risen above the horizon, which still made Naruto curious as to what could have possibly done so much damage to a celestial body that large, the expedition came to a halt and set up camp. A large bonfire was made from the dried wood they brought with them, which was a bit old-fashioned given today's technology, and several tents were set up around the fire. While this was going on, several men were ordered to put sensor beacons around the camp, which would set off an alarm if anything crossed through them. Naruto himself had helped in all of these different projects, although mostly in helping setting up the sensor beacons, and proved to be just more than a hired sword that only cared about doing his job. In fact, Naruto could now be found sitting around the large bonfire with his sword in one hand and a whetstone in the other. All around him the other members of the expedition were laughing and drinking, celebrating their first night in the great desert expanse, and this reminded Naruto quite a bit of his old family. The Branwen tribe may have been just a bunch of cutthroats and thieves, even though they were thieves with a sense of Darwinism, but man did they know how to throw a celebration party. It was at one of these parties that Naruto saw his mom actually laugh for the first time, although she had been drinking quite a bit that night, and Naruto did have to help her back to her tent. The fact still remains that these people, in this moment, reminded Naruto of home. Hey, you should drink something, a soft voice said, drawing Naruto's focus away from sharpening his blade. Naruto is no stranger to beautiful women. Raven had made sure to take care of that early on so that he wouldn't get distracted by one in a fight. But that didn't mean he couldn't appreciate them in his downtime. Take, for instance, the girl offering him a drink. She was no doubt a more mature woman, even though she was slightly shorter than Naruto, but time had been very kind to her. The way her dark brown hair framed the sides of her face, not to mention how innocent her blue eyes were, gave her a sense of gentleness that Naruto had hardly ever seen. It also helped that she had a great figure, even when it was buried beneath heavy robes. Naruto gave her his best smile, which was apparently pretty good if the blood rushing to her cheeks was anything to go by. Thanks, would you like to join me? I'd love to, she said, taking a seat next to him and folding her hands neatly in her lap. I'm Celine, by the way. I'm Naruto. The mercenary hired Naruto began but was cut off by Celine, to protect us on our long trip into the desert. I know who you are. Ivan made sure to let us know who to tell if we saw any Grim. Well, since you already know what I do for a living, what do you do? Naruto inquired, taking a sip of the drink offered to him, and noting the slight burn of alcohol as it went down his throat. I study ancient civilizations. That certainly wasn't what Naruto was expecting her to say. It's why I decided to join up with this expedition to begin with. The treasure we're looking for supposedly belongs to the first ever civilization of humankind. It's said that they existed long before the moon was shattered and even some other structures still survive to this day. Really, I've never heard of the civilization before. Is it a recent discovery? Naruto asked, if for no other reason than it sounded interesting. Celine looked away a bit shyly, almost embarrassed, before mumbling her response. I guess you could say I'm kind of the leading expert, since I'm the only one that really believes in them. Every other professor I went to said that what I was thinking was crazy, that there was no proof of this first civilization. But you believe they're real, and if you search hard enough then perhaps you will find the proof you need. Just don't let professors, especially those ones that think they know everything about everything, hold you back from your dream, Naruto said, taking another drink. Besides, I think it would be pretty cool if you found something all the way out here in the desert. You know, for a mercenary hired to protect us from the Grim, you're a pretty decent guy. Celine turned back to Naruto, the pleasant smile on her face, which just made Naruto chuckle a bit. Oh, so you've met many mercenaries before? Naruto challenged, raising his eyebrow just a bit. Nope, Celine happily admitted, this time taking a sip from her own cup. But as far as first times go, you aren't so bad. Naruto nearly choked on his drink when he saw the flirtatious look she was shooting him, but quickly corrected himself to preserve some semblance of manliness. He may have been used to the female body, being able to ignore his hormones whenever he wanted, but that still didn't mean the temptation wasn't there. Well, if you do find something out here and become all rich and famous, just be sure to throw in the name of the mercenary that protected you. Celine let out a light laugh. Don't worry, I'll make sure to put your name on the front page. The night continued on just about as peacefully as one would expect, with Naruto spending most of the night talking to Celine and consuming his fair amount of alcohol. It wasn't usually a good idea for Naruto to get drunk while he was supposed to be on the job, but then again he had a very strong alcohol tolerance thanks to his mother. Celine, on the other hand, turned out to not be so lucky and was practically hanging off the younger man by the end of the night. Now Naruto, being the gentleman that he was, took Celine back to her tent and put her in her sleeping bag. He would have left at that point if the brown-haired older woman hadn't grabbed his arm and practically pulled him down on top of her. And where do you think you're going? Celine asked, her eyes half-lidded and a small haze of lust coming over them. Why don't you stay with me tonight? That's not a good idea, you're drunk, Naruto stated as he tried to pull himself away from the older woman, who managed to wrap her arms around his neck and pull him just a bit closer. Come on, I just want to have a bit of fun, she moaned rather lustfully, a sound Naruto found himself appreciating more than he should. Celine, Naruto began but was cut off by the feeling of warm lips covering his red eyes widening just a bit at the sudden action, before he felt a warm tongue slip into his mouth. This was a bad idea. This was a very bad idea. But Naruto's resistance slowly wilted away the longer Celine's tongue ravaged his mouth. Eventually the Branwen side of him, the side that doesn't back down from any challenge, reared its head and the fight was on. Celine let out a dazzling moan when Naruto's tongue began to fight her own, his lack of experience being more than made up for by his tenacity. Naruto eventually broke the case, the string of saliva going from his lips down to hers, and the way his red eyes stared at her made Celine's body shiver. If you want me to stop, then you should tell me now, Naruto said, his rough hands trailing down the side of her hips until eventually gliding down underneath her and gripping her firm rear. She began, only for her breath to hitch when she felt Naruto's lips against her neck. This is your last chance. Naruto grinned just a bit more when he felt her body arc into his own, trying to cause as much friction between them as possible. Celine pulled Naruto's lips away from her neck and began kissing him like crazy. Almost like her life depended on it. This time it was his tongue that slipped inside her mouth, hungry and demanding for more. And it wasn't like anything Celine had ever experienced before. Her hands went from around his neck to the back of his head, running through his messy blonde hair, as he uses one hand to support himself, and the other to slowly massage her rear. His lips were like fire. The way his tongue toyed with hers made a pool of heat formed between her legs and only made her want him more. This dangerous young man, only a few years younger than herself, had possibly lived more than she ever had in those old universities. That's what made her burn for him. She always did have a thing for dangerous men. That, and she was incredibly drunk right now. The rest of the night was filled with moans of ecstasy and grunts like that of wild animals. Celine would remember every moment of it, despite how drunk she was, and the both of them would get the best sleep they'd had in their entire lives. She would even remember how safe she felt falling asleep with him, her head resting on his bare chest, and the sound of his heart allowing her to sleep. The next day the whole caravan was back on the move, the tents having been packed up early in the morning and all traces of their existence there swept away by the desert. Naruto was once again riding with Ivan, after waking up to a very flushed Celine who stammered out apologies for her behavior the previous night. Now Ivan, after hearing what Naruto had gotten up to last night, proceeded to inform him that Celine was actually his daughter. This was then followed by Ivan laughing, rather loudly, at Naruto's shocked face, and saying that his daughter was her own woman who could do as she pleased. "You know, you nearly gave me a heart attack just now," Naruto said with a deadpan look on his face, which only seemed to make Ivan laugh even more. "You should have seen what happened to the first boy that my little girl brought home. I don't think she's ever really forgiven me for running him off with the family shotgun. But I have calmed down since then, and if she is happy, I am happy for her," Ivan finished on a calmer note, glancing away from the desert road ahead of him to look down at an old paper map. Ivan Kanuriadm, a voice came over the radio, apparently from one of their scouts if Naruto was reading the communications system right. Ivan reached out and grabbed the communications device and raised it up to his mouth. "This is Ivan, what is it, Scout 1? Ivan, we go to big purple mouther. There Sabignastipak Manticore shedded right our way. I hope a thought mercenary you hired us up to Thetisk," the scout shouted, the roaring engine of his scout vehicle only being overshadowed by the roar of the Manticore. Ivan turned to speak with Naruto, about to tell them to get out there, only to just barely catch a fleeting glance of Naruto's feet as he climbed out of the top hatch. The older man just smirked. He liked this kid's attitude. "All right everyone," Ivan shouted into his own radio, "stay inside your vehicles and let our mercenary friend do his job. Remember, stay safe and stay together." Naruto couldn't help the grin that formed on his face as he stood atop Ivan's vehicle, the wind whipping around him as they flew through the desert at high speeds. In front of them, chasing a group of scouts that were hightailing it back to the main caravan, was a pack of no less than 20 manticores, and they looked hungry for blood. The blonde-haired Branwen swiftly pulled both daggers out from their holsters along the back of his waist, their sharpened blades gleaming in the sunlight, and launched them at Manticore just about to devour one of the scouts that had fallen behind. The twin blades, sharpened to a width of an atom, pierced into the Manticore's eyes with enough force to explode from the back of its head. Then, as if by magic, both of the blades flew back into Naruto's awaiting hands. This happened 2 more times before the Manticores finally realized that there was a possible threat to them, which they targeted with little regard to their own lives. One of the Manticores came at Naruto from behind, the horns on its head level with Naruto's back, only for Naruto to suddenly backflip at the last moment, and stab both his blades into the beast's back. Naruto's excited laugh echoed the creature's painful roar as he now soared through the sky above the racing convoy. This was way more fun than fighting the grim back and veil. "Come on you big beastie, stay still," Naruto shouted as he slowly stood up on the flying creature's back, still using his daggers to keep himself stable, before spying another Manticore coming right at him. Naruto jumped off his current mount's back and onto the one charging at them both, this time grabbing onto the creature's horns for support, while his legs wrapped around its neck in the tight chokehold. He then spun his dagger around in his hand a few times before stabbing it into the Manticore's right eye. Another howl of pain ripped through the air, only to be silenced when Naruto drove his other dagger down through its skull, leaving him in freefall. "Alright, time to really get this party started," Naruto shouted, pulling up one of his sleeves to reveal a strange-looking device which proceeded to fire a grapple hook into the chest of another Manticore. Swinging through the air like a madman, Naruto put away both of his daggers and drew his sword with his free hand. The grapple hook embedded in the Manticore suddenly folded into itself and detached, the retractable system in his device bring it right back to him, just as Naruto got done decapitating 2 of the creatures and cutting off another one's wing. "Yes, I see my money was well spent on you," Ivan's voice shouted through Naruto's earpiece as the man himself watched Naruto work, amazed at how skilled the young man was. "Just keep this caravan moving, I'll keep these guys focused on me." Naruto grunted as his blade sliced through another of the creatures. One of the Grim actually managed to blindside Naruto from above, coming at him from the direction of the sun and ramming itself right into Naruto's chest. The thing about this Grim, besides the fact it was obviously bigger than the others, was they also had more spike-like protrusions coming from it. This was no doubt the alpha of the pack, and it was beyond angry. "I hope you're hungry," the young Branwen shouted as he reversed his sword grip, positioning his blade right in front of the Grim's mouth, for a flaming steel sandwich. The notches in Naruto's blade, the ones that Raven had even questioned him about when he was forging the weapon, suddenly sprang to life with fire. The Alpha Manticore roared in pain as its insides were burned and sliced all at the same time, even becoming so intense that fire burst out of its stomach. Eventually the creature died and Naruto was left free falling once more, his sword returning to normal and hiding its full capabilities. Now with nothing but air underneath him, Naruto swung around and shot his grapple hook again, except this time it penetrated right through the Grimm's head. The creature died almost instantly when the hook expanded inside its brain, which in turn only paused Naruto's freefall for a split second. Well crap, Naruto grunted as he landed back on top of Ivan's vehicle, the creatures above him already swarming and getting ready to dive on him. Naruto, I hope you have a plan because there's no way we can survive something like that, Ivan shouted, knowing that they get hit by that swarm of manticores then the whole convoy could flip over and leave them all stranded. Yeah, I have an idea, but I don't think I'm gonna like it all that much, Naruto shouted back, holding his hand out in front of him and closing his eyes to concentrate. Raven had always told her son that his semblance was very destructive, that he always had to be in complete control when drawing upon it, or it could destroy everything around him. Even after all these years of training how to use it, learning how to focus his mind and willpower to make sure it didn't suddenly explode out of him, Naruto felt it barely even scratched the surface of being able to use it properly. Come on, for once just work with me here, Naruto growled as he continued to focus his semblance, feeling the destructive energy coursing through his entire body and coming together in the center of his outstretched hand. A high-pitched screeching noise suddenly split the air and Naruto opened his eyes to see that it had worked. In the palm of his hand was a basketball-sized orb of rotating red chaotic energy, and it looked ready to explode at any moment. So, with the swarm of Grimm now coming right at them, Naruto leapt from the top of Ivan's vehicle once again. With a mighty roar of his own, Naruto actually threw the ball of energy at the approaching monsters, and what came next was amazing. The first Grimm got off lucky, it was disintegrated the moment the orb touched it. The surrounded ones weren't so lucky. Their soulless bodies were ripped apart by violent tides of red energy, rendering them to ash before they could actually physically turn to ash from dying. Then, just as fast as it had happened, the red energy dissipated into the sky and left nothing but clear roads ahead. Naruto landed on the hood of Ivan's vehicle again, and was greeted by the sight of the older man giving him a wide smile and a thumbs up. Now I'm starting to think you were a bargain. Yeah, that took a bit out of me, Naruto replied, only for something completely unexpected to happen. The Grimm that Naruto had originally used as a mount suddenly came flying at him from out of nowhere, having apparently not been with the swarm when it was destroyed. Its fang-covered mouth latched around Naruto's arm and suddenly took off with him into the sky. Naruto watched, in no small amount of panic, as the ground and the expedition got smaller and smaller. It didn't matter how tough he was, if he got any higher then the fall would kill him. The sound of a rifle going off ripped through the air, the head of the manticore suddenly exploded, and Naruto found himself falling towards the ground at a frightening speed. Then, just moments before he hit the ground, Naruto saw what looked to be red and white rose petals floating around him. Who are you? Several hours later, Naruto wasn't sure what he would find when he woke up. In fact, he was even sure that he would wake up after that fall he'd taken. But he certainly didn't expect to be on a rather comfortable bed. Everything about the bed said that it was homemade, from the bits of tree trunks that made the bedpost to the soft fur that made up the mattress. But there were worse ways to wake up. What was even more surprising was that he didn't feel the traditional pain that usually came from using his semblance. By the brother gods, what the hell hit me? Naruto grunted as he struggled to sit up, his body feeling surprisingly sluggish despite the fact that he felt no pain. Now that he was more awake, Naruto managed to get a good look around the area he'd been taken to. The stone walls and ceiling was a clear indication that they were either underground or inside a cave. The small torches flying the room lit up a desk and several bookcases, and the long hunting spear resting up against a nearby wall told Naruto that the person that saved him was at least a fighter. Before Naruto could think any more on the matter, let alone come up with a plausible plan of escape, the sound of footsteps alerted him to someone approaching. So, being as well trained as he was, Naruto laid back down and pretended to still be unconscious. Naruto strained his ears to the max to pick up any distant sound, trying to determine if this was only one person or more, but couldn't tell from how far away they still were. Then the footfalls stopped and Naruto's danger sense exploded to life. I'm not going to hurt you. Chapter 3. More than a few months had passed since Naruto found his way out of the desert, having eventually met back up with Ivan's caravan and completed the job he was assigned to. Of course, in those few days in which he had been separated from them, Naruto had learned some very interesting things. Things that would put him in danger if anyone found out that he knew them, so he told no one. Now, on another continent entirely, Naruto found himself slowly approaching a rather large city. The city was known as Vale, which was one of the largest cities in the country, and was home to Beacon Academy. It was actually a job that brought him to the city, given to him by a mysterious benefactor, but the money was high enough that he wasn't too concerned about just who had hired him. In fact, Naruto hoped he'd never meet this person because a person like that is only trouble. His job was actually rather simple: infiltrate the local academy and locate some sort of artifact that was hidden beneath it. That part wouldn't be too difficult. It was gaining entry that proved to be the hard part. Academies like Beacon were well known for their high security, state-of-the-art detection sensors, and being filled to a brim with people they know how to kill you in more ways than one. So, short of actually storming the place with a small army, the only way to gain access was become a student. This is actually where the mysterious benefactor came into play, given the fact that they had provided him with actual documentation that would get him into the school as a new student. The best part was that this job was on an unlimited time limit, giving Naruto as much time as he needed to infiltrate the school and gain their trust. Now if only they'd offered to give me a ride here, Naruto grumbled as he finally made it within the city limits, having shown his fake ID to the city guards that kept the Grim at bay. Supposedly this school would open its doors the next few days, which gave Naruto plenty of time to make himself familiar with the city and find a hotel to stay at. Naruto shifted his dusty brown cloak, something he kept with him since his time in the desert, which only slightly displayed the weapons and armor he kept concealed underneath it. His clothing, which at one time only held small bits of armor to protect him and still give him some maneuverability, now consisted of light leather and several metal plates. He wore a single piece of metal as the chest plate, and several smaller plates of metal over his arms and waists. He finally finished off his outfit with metal boots that traveled all the way up to his knees, and then metal gauntlets with pointed tips at the end of each finger to make them resemble claws. Also, due to not having any proper grooming equipment, while out in the desert, Naruto had grown a slight beard. It wasn't anything too dramatic, nor did it make him look older than he actually was, but it was something that Naruto felt needed to go. After all, he did want to look presentable on his first day of school. Boom! The sound of an explosion definitely caught Naruto's attention, given that you don't normally hear them in such a large city, especially at night. With a small grin on his face, the idea of stretching his muscles a bit being too much to deny, Naruto broke off into a dead sprint towards the sound of fighting. Naruto rounded the corner and had to pause for what he saw, because you wouldn't expect to see a little girl, wielding a massive scythe, beating up several armed thugs. Now he knew who she was. The red cloak and silver eyes were dead giveaway. Spotting a man trying to sneak up on her, Naruto charged forward, leapt into the air, and planted both of his feet right against the man's face. Landing back on the ground, after doing a rather stylish backflip, Naruto found himself back to back with the little girl. Mind if I join in? Naruto asked, turning his head to give the little girl a slight smirk. This is going to be so much fun. She practically squealed before the both of them took off towards the nearest victim. Seeing as the little girl wasn't slicing the people into pieces with her massive scythe, which could apparently double as a rifle, Naruto decided to stick to his hands and just beat these guys to a pulp. His fists were like twin blurs of bone-breaking destruction, slamming into his first target's chest like jackhammers straight from hell, finishing with one overpowered punch to the face, enough to lift the man off the ground and send him into a wall. Naruto ducked under an axe ready to remove his head and turned around to deliver a flying kick in return. "Common, I'm not even breaking a sweat over here," Naruto taunted, thumbing his nose as he bounced around on the tips of his toes, like some guy he'd seen in a vid. Another one charged, his weapon of choice held high for a very obvious overhead strike, only to suddenly find his world going sideways and an armored boot lodged into the side of his face. Naruto Gus kept grinning, using his already staggering momentum to flip around and deliver another devastating kick to another well-dressed man. This continued on until there was a small pile of men on the ground and only one remaining, who looked scared out of his mind. Now, there's no need to be afraid, this is only gonna hurt for a moment. Naruto just chuckled before he was suddenly in front of the man, delivering a punch so powerful that it shattered the man's jaw. Naruto turned just in time to see another well-dressed man, although this one wore a white suit and looked much different from the others, fire an explosive shot right at the red-hooded girl. The shot was no doubt aimed at her feet, meaning her life was in no real danger, but Naruto still reacted regardless. His cloak shifted as he came to a skidding stop between the shot and the girl, revealing a bit of his armor and the hilt of his sword, before his blade was ripped from its sheath and batted away the projectile. "Well, that was unexpected," was all the white-clad man said before firing another shot, this time aimed to kill. The little girl took this as her own invitation to attack, using Naruto's shoulders as a springboard to get above everyone, before leveling the barrel of her weapon with the man's cane. A well-placed shot, which was impressive for someone so young, was all it took to knock the weapon out of his hands while Naruto allowed the explosive round to sail past him and explode against a nearby wall. With both his weapon out of reach and Naruto coming at him like a speeding train, the man could only mutter one word: "Fuck." Everything went black. It wasn't long before the authorities arrived, courtesy of the man whose store had been robbed, and in that time Naruto became acquainted with the little girl he had helped out. Sure enough, it was the person he thought it was, a young Ms. Ruby Rose. As it turns out, the only reason she was even involved was because one of those thugs tried to rob her, something of which they now clearly regretted doing, and she was apparently attending Signal Academy to learn how to become a huntress. "So what's your name?" Ruby asked, police officers moving around them and escorting the criminals into the back of their vehicles. Naruto Uzumaki." "Ha, you got a funny last name," Ruby laughed before quickly slamming her hand over her mouth, realizing how rude she must have sounded. Naruto left as well, lowering his hood to finally reveal what he really looked like underneath. "Yeah, I guess it is, but it makes me stand out from everyone else." Ruby actually felt her cheeks heat up a little bit at the sight of such a, in her opinion, ruggedly handsome young man. "Well, I like it." "Thanks," Naruto smirked, while Ruby's face heated up just that much more. "I'm glad a cutie like you likes my last name so much." "Well," a very stern and feminine voice cut in, followed by the sound of heels clicking against stone, "I'm glad the two of you could become such fast friends." Naruto was familiar with the woman known as Glinda Goodwitch, not personally of course, but her reputation was rather impressive, and the profile he had on her was apparently spot on. Being a huntress, even if she was more of a teacher these days, had clearly kept the woman in wonderful shape, no doubt leaving many of her male students distracted in class. Even Naruto had to admit that he wouldn't mind playing naughty teacher with her. Those legs went on for days. Ruby tried to stammer out, clearly more afraid of the blonde-haired woman than Naruto was. We stopped a guy trying to rob a dust store, what's the problem? Hot she may be, but a Branwen backs down to no one. You'll both be coming with me to answer some questions, was Glinda's response. But Naruto just stood up and readjusted his cloak. Are you the police? Because they said we were free to go. Naruto grinned in an almost mocking way. No, I'm none like that. Naruto walked right past her without so much as a second glance, heading off to find a hotel for the night. Then I guess I'll be seeing ya. There was something about the way he was mocking her that reminded Glinda far too much of a certain crow, especially that grin of his. To give Ruby credit, she did try and slip away while Glinda was focused on Naruto. But unfortunately she wasn't fast enough. And where do you think you're going? As Naruto walked down the street, cloak blowing lightly in the wind, he couldn't help but go back to that desert and remember everything he went through there. He pulled out a flask from the confines of his cloak, twisted open the cap, and took a small sip. The liquid burned going down, but it was a comforting burn. This job was gonna take a while. Sure enough, Naruto did end up finding a rather cheap hotel to stay at. The bed was lumpy, the shower barely even worked, and Naruto was pretty sure there was still dried blood on the bathroom mirror, but it was cheap and out of the way. So, with nothing left to do for the rest of the night, the young Branwen decided to relax. That is until he heard the sound of knocking at his door, which was rather strange considering no one even knew he was in the city. Knock, knock, knock! Yeah, I'm coming! Naruto shouted as he finally got up from his bed, not even bothering to put his shirt back on, and walked over to the door with his knife held behind his back. Opening up the door, Naruto wasn't expecting a rather attractive young woman to be standing on the other side. She was rather fair-skinned, had long black hair and bright amber eyes. Her sharp facial features, combined with the way her eyes seemed to glow, gave her a rather dangerous and appealing appearance, especially with her dark red, off-the-shoulder, V-neck mini dress with a yellow border. She practically screamed trouble. Naruto Uzumaki? Dear Lord, even her voice was dark and seductive. Naruto felt the urge to play along. The one and only. Naruto flipped his blade around into reverse grip. But I have a feeling you already knew that. The woman smirked slightly, apparently amused. We have a mutual friend, one that expects us to work together in the coming months. Oh, I get it now, Naruto grinned in an almost mocking way. If that's the case, then why don't you come inside? I'm afraid I have other business to attend to, but I was instructed to give you this. The woman reached down the middle of her dress, clearly attempting to steal Naruto's gaze with the way her hands slowly moved about her cleavage, before pulling out a simple piece of folded paper. Naruto reached out to take the piece of paper, his blue eyes never breaking away from her amber ones, and he could have sworn he saw a flash of fire within them. She was dangerous, which was unfortunate because Naruto liked dangerous women. Said woman then suddenly reached out and grabbed Naruto's hand, only to find a blade pressed up against her throat and her back slammed against the door. Her mocking smile never wavered for a second, but then again neither did Naruto's. Cinder, she practically purred, welcome to Vale. Naruto lowered his weapon and shook his hand free from her grasp, noting the way it almost felt burned. Thanks, I can't wait for us to start working more closely. Meanwhile, several thousand miles away from the city of Vale, a lone bandit camp could be found in the middle of the large forest. A massive tent stood proudly in the middle of the camp, surrounded by smaller tents, and a large wall made of wooden spikes. But it was the person inside this tent that was really important. After all, she was the proud mother of Naruto Branwen. Raven knew that her actions didn't make her mother of the year. Half the time she didn't even believe she deserved a happy life. But none that changed the fact that she dearly missed her son, her Naruto, who she watched grow from an innocent little boy into a warrior that would make anyone in the Branwen tribe proud. She thought they would always be together, that they would be unstoppable. But then Naruto left. She could understand why he did it. What teenager didn't want to go out and see the world? But that didn't make it hurt any less. Now Raven understood why Crow drank so much, given that she was now slowly sipping on a brandy and looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her hair was a mess, she had dark bags under her eyes, and the wrinkles she got from frowning made her look much older than she actually was. Not to mention that her armor was practically thrown all over the place, and her sword was embedded in a wooden beam. Stupid brat, Raven grumbled as she took another sip of her drink, taking too much after me. Why did you have to inherit that too? Why can't you have been more like Tai? Been unwaveringly loyal, even to the point of stupidity. Raven could still remember all the fun she used to have with her little Naruto, away from the other members of the tribe and where she could just be a happy mother. Even when they were just training together, she really just wanted to see him again. Leader, a random member of the tribe suddenly called out, opening the flap to Raven's tent, only for a knife to suddenly whiz past his face. I said that I didn't want to be disturbed. Raven's eyes almost glowed, a clear sign that she was more temperamental than normal. It's important. Raven's eyes narrowed even more, making the man sweat. It's about Naruto. Raven's eyes took on a new emotion, one that honestly scared the man more than her anger ever could. It was an emotion that could only be described as obsession, pure and simple. Raven was up and in the man's face in an instant, the alcohol on her breath almost making him wince. Tell me. One of our informants said that someone matching his description arrived in Vale earlier today. They described him almost perfectly, even mentioning the scars on his cheeks, and they even sent a picture, the man hastily answered, pulling out his scroll and showing the picture to Raven. The red-eyed woman's eyes widened at the sight of her son, who looked much more mature despite only being gone for less than a year. She liked the beard though, it reminded her of when Tai grew his out, but it looks better on Naruto. Then there was his state of dress, which told Raven he clearly been in his fair share of battles and came out victorious. Send this picture to me and then inform the others that I'll be leaving for a few days, Raven suddenly ordered, her mind suddenly razor-sharp now that she had a lead to go off of. Yes ma'am. Raven sat down on her bed, pulling out the larger of her two scrolls and pulling up the pictures she'd just been sent. She gazed down upon it with a loving expression, tracing her hand over the image. It had been so worrying, especially when she found out that she couldn't open a portal to her own son, but now she knew where he was. Don't worry, Naruto, Mama is coming. Raven paused when a foul stench finally reached her nose, after a very long shower and a full night's rest. She found her baby boy and she wasn't going to let anything, or anyone, stand between them. The glass picture of the two of them, which sat on Raven's bedstand, suddenly cracked. Most would have found it ominous, the way the crack ran through Raven's face and then down to the image of a baby Naruto. In the highest tower, of Beacon Academy, sat a gray-haired man sipping on a cup of coffee. This man's name was Ojban, the headmaster of said academy and a man of many secrets. Playing in front of him was recording of a fight that took place not a few hours ago, between two individuals and one Roman Torchwick. Glinda Gludwich, the headmistress and his right hand, had managed to talk to one of the fighters and even secured Ojban a brief visit with them. Ruby Rose would now be attending Beacon Academy a few years ahead of schedule, but it was a second fighter that remained in the dark. Now, why are you so familiar to me, Mr. Uzumaki? Ojban asked himself as he stared harder at the footage, knowing that this teenager was someone he'd met before but couldn't place where. The boy's record said that he was self-taught and managed to pass the basic exams to get into an academy, but there was just something off about it. It was the way he moved that really drew Ojban's gaze, or more specifically how it was so familiar. If he didn't know better, Ojban could have sworn he was looking at Raven, or at least someone taught by her. It could be her son, but Crow had even confirmed the boy's death at the hands of the Grim, Glinda said as she to observe the man fighting on the screen, still remembering how irritating that stupid smirk of his was. That's true, Crow did say that he saw the boy's grave and that he'd never seen Raven so heartbroken. Still, make sure you keep an eye on him while he's here. We're too late in the game for an unknown party and everything needs to go just as planned. There is something different in his tone, Glinda noted, something ancient. You're playing a dangerous game, Headmaster. Glinda never liked how manipulative Ojban could be, especially after what she saw him do to manipulate Ruby. I've been at this game for a long time and it's time for it to end, Ojban sighed, taking another sip of his coffee. This will be the generation that ends the game. Very well, we will have cameras set up in the dorm that he gets placed into and monitor him closely, Glinda said before exiting his office, leaving the headmaster alone to once again watch the fight. His eyes narrowed dangerously. What your game, Salem? Chapter 4. Raven sat up in her bed the next morning, her head splitting like firewood, and a look of annoyance in her red eyes. She wasn't a morning person, never had been and most likely never would be, and it had been quite some time since she had to watch over her son every moment of the day. Naruto had grown up so fast before her very eyes, an unfortunate fact of living amongst the tribe, but she would often remember the early years she had with him, when he was still small. With a barely withheld groan, Raven forced herself out of bed and stumbled over to the wash bin, only to pause a moment later when something caught her eye. Walking over to her table, which was covered almost completely in empty bottles, Raven actually felt her eyes moisten up at what she saw. The Law of the Wolves, Raven whispered as she bent down and picked up an old paper. That's right, it was real paper. Book with the image of a wolf carved into the cover. When Naruto was little, Raven used to read this book to him almost every night before he went to bed. It was the same book that Raven's own father used to read to Crow and herself, which played a rather large part in shaping the red-eyed bandit queen into the woman she was. It's why she was so loyal to her tribe, why Crow abandoning them had hurt so much, and why she'd sacrificed so much for her only son. Sitting back down on the edge of her bed, Raven began to read while her mind wandered back far into the past. Now this is the law of the jungle, as old and as true as the sky, and the wolf that shall keep it may prosper. Flashback. But the wolf had break it musty. Raven read slowly to 3-year-old Naruto. Ha looked upon his mother with wider red eyes had spoken of innocence. As the creepeth that girdles the tree trunk, Velor runneth forward and back. For the strength of the pack is the wolf, and the strength of the wolf is the pack. Wash day life from no stip toe deep. Drink deeply, bien, virtue deep. And remember the night is for hunting gone, forget not the day is for sleep. Naruto jiggled when Raven playfully poked his nose before decling his toes, earning Gaj a prizing lie soft giggle in return. The jackalma followed the tidger, but, cub, went the whisker grown. Remember the wolf is a hunter, go for it hand jet foot off the own. Her father explained histo herete engage, the huileshua salo tohavhi, pass a child, shwoodun they be expected to stand in heron before a world. Keep peace with the Lord soft tejungle, the tiger, the panther, the bear, and trouble not hath it silent, and mock not the borbeta skyny slayer. When pack meets with pack and tejungle, and neither will be from trail, lead down till the leader shave spoken, it may be fair words shall prevail, a sheaf, shuas expectedo hold the safedio of tribe above whatever pride she may have, even if that means making peace with those that might stand against them. When I fight with the wolf of Tepak I must fight Timoloni and Afar, Lustotha stake part in the quarrel in the pack is diminished be war. These ways in Otherlisten should need to teach her sonalian, that any dispute in the clan should be held away from prying eyes and that their unity was what made estimable to survive the thills. The lair of Poolfish's refuge, and where has made him a shome, note event the head wolf may enter, note event the council may come. The lair of Poolfish's refuge, but where has Digjito a plain, the councils, Halson him a siege, and so has shall change yet again. If I kill before midnight Bisalan tan wake northwards with the hour bay, lest I frighten the deer from the crow pan the brothers going to away. Ye may kill for yourselves, and your mates, and your cubs as they need and ye can. But kill not for pleasure eve killing, and 7 times never killman. Mama, the small child interrupted, drawing Raven's gaze away from the book. Yes? Are wolves? Naruto's innocent question won her smile from Raven. Something's done quite a bit marif over thyers, before lianing down tokus just for it. Yes, little one, where yon big wolf pack, and dear where are the prince? Oh nady, just like form, you Williador tribe. Il bestranglia? Raven washer summer woodhovskia led in delight at the narataket little tidishtoi side. No, Harabruktanser drew confused look from the child. Win it? Nini can bestrang like because a ninil sees him. You must learn to bestrong like you, little wolf. Raven wasn't sui, but giving Naruto a same nickname she had some how felt right. Raven had been her father's little wolf, strong and proud, and no Naruto washer little wolf. He would lead a Virion far better than she had. The strength of Tepakist wolf, Naruto said after focusing for a moment. His voice tired while his eyes slowly closed. Raven smiled in Emiratime as he crawled into the large bed next to her little Naruto, pulling him closely as if to keep him safe. And flashed back. And the strength of the wolf is the pack? Raven whispered as she set the book back down on the table. Now clothed in her traditional armor with her sword and rotary chamber sheath filled to the brim with 6 different kind of dust-infused blades. I'm coming, little wolf. Raven vanished a moment later. A red-eyed crow could be seen flying away from the Branwen camp. Naruto grunted a bit in annoyance as the sun's rays peeked through his window, having just started rising over the mountains and lighting the sky up in a beautiful array of colors. Stretching his arms high above his head, the young Branwen couldn't suppress his grunt of relief when he felt almost all his joints pop at the same time. This was the day his mission would really begin, a mission more dangerous than any before it, and Naruto couldn't deny the small bit of excitement he felt. So, after a quick shower and trimming his beard down to an almost clean shave, Naruto donned his gear and inspected his weapons one last time. The armor could still use some work, but his sword and twin knives were clean to perfection. Then there was his third and final weapon, something he got during his time in the desert. To any other person it would look like a simple collapsible spear, being that it seemed to fold in on itself for easier transport and concealment. But that was only partially true. If one were to look closely at the red-tinted spear tip, they would notice a slight seam going down the middle of it. This seam was where the blade itself would split apart to reveal the barrel of the weapon's gun mode. The gun of choice just so happened to be a highly powered sniper rifle, with a scope that popped out of the shaft itself and a trigger further back. It was a rather basic weapon, made long before the more fancy modern ones, but it got the job done. A well-maintained weapon is a happy weapon, Naruto quoted the blacksmith that helped him forge his sword, not to mention nearly blew them all to hell because he liked using fire dust to heat his forge. Raven gave them both a stern talking to for the next 3 hours. She was not impressed. Getting back on track, Naruto exited his hotel room with a dramatic flapping of his cloak and a wide grin on his face. The manager, who was a grumpy old man with fading hair and squinted eyes, didn't even so much as acknowledge Naruto when he checked out. Still, a grumpy old man was better than an army of angry Grim. It also didn't take long for Naruto to find the airship that was to take him to Beacon Academy, given that there was a crowd of young people around it, and a bunch of families wishing their children good luck. Naruto resisted the urge to roll his eyes at this. His life living with bandits had shaped his view of the people that lived within the kingdoms. They didn't know what it was like to truly survive, to scrounge every day for their next meal, to survive grim attack after grim attack. Although Naruto wasn't as vocal about it as some of his fellow Branwen tribe members. No, are you sure you both have everything? We can still go back to the house if you forgot anything. You guys could even go to school next year if you missed this transport. Naruto saw a father proclaim rather loudly, trying to convince his 2 daughters not to go to Beacon Academy. One of the daughters Naruto was surprised to have recognized, given that he had fought alongside her not too long ago, but he was sure the girl was too young to go to such a prestigious academy. Then there was the older sister, who was clearly the more physically mature one and wore an outfit that would catch most people's attention. Although there was something else about her that drew Naruto's gaze, something on an instinctual level, but after a few moments, he chose to ignore. He'd been attracted to random people before. It really was no surprise that he'd be attractive to someone as good-looking as that. We're fine, Dad, we have everything we need, so please stop freaking out, the older sister said as good-naturedly as she possibly could, although it was clear she was growing embarrassed from her father's antics. I know, but can you blame me? I'm a single dad that's about to see his 2 little girls go off and learn how to fight monsters. I'm a nervous wreck right now, the dad chuckled, nervously scratching the back of his head, only for Ruby to suddenly lurch forward and wrap her arms around the man's waist. We'll be fine, you and Uncle Crow taught us everything we know. You just have to take care of yourself now. Naruto actually found it rather touching the way Ruby was trying to comfort her father, although he quickly decided to move on to the ship just in case they took notice of his eavesdropping. The airship's interior wasn't actually all that big, being about 12 feet across and not that long. The viewing gallery was rather fancy looking, with 4 symmetrical windows mounted facing down so that people could see the city below, green flooring with a simplistic design, and the couch spanning the entire length of the windows. Naruto chose to actually rest up against one of the back walls while also claiming a spot on the couch, so that he could have a clear view of everyone that boards the ship. Now let's see what kind of threat these people might be. One of the first lessons Naruto had ever been taught was how to gauge people, figure out their strengths and weaknesses, and more importantly he was taught how to do it without being caught. The first few people aboard of the ship weren't all that impressive, wielding basic weaponry and even more basic armor, but he didn't have to wait long for someone interesting to step aboard. Naruto recognized her almost instantly. Piranhikos, the so-called invincible girl, wasn't one who could go places without being recognized. Naruto had watched a few of her matches, mostly during his trip to Vale, and had deduced her semblance after only a few moments of thinking about it. It was actually pretty clever, given that almost all weapons nowadays were made out of metal and she didn't broadcast her ability. Still, as far as trained fighters go for his year, Naruto had a feeling that she would be the toughest one. A few more students came in, and then there was Ruby and her big sister. Naruto actually found a bit of amusement watching the older girl practically crush her little sister in a bear hug, talking so loud that even he could hear them from across the ship. The young Branwen could tell, just by her personality alone, that the big sister was a heavy hitter. Everything about her just screamed tank, and that's why she would be one of the easiest people for Naruto to fight if it ever came down to it. Maybe I should go over and say hi to Little Red, Naruto silently contemplated to himself, weighing the pros and cons of actually getting involved with these kids. Just off the top of his head, he would already have a pre-established relationship with someone at the school, but on the flip side he might grow too attached to them. That had always been both one of his greatest strengths and greatest flaws. He tended to get attached. Naruto, hey Naruto, over here. It would seem Naruto's decision had been made for him, for Ruby had somehow managed to spot him. With the shake of his head and a soft smile on his face, Naruto got up from his rather comfy position and approached the 2 sisters. Ruby was practically jumping up and down with excitement, showing a type of innocence that not many people had. Her sister, on the other hand, was sending Naruto the type of look that a predator would send a fresh lump of meat. Well, I didn't think I'd be seeing you here, Little Red, Naruto greeted when he finally came to a stop across from the 2 girls, one hand resting on his hip in a rather relaxed manner. You mean after you abandoned me to Ms. Goodwitch? Ruby's happy expression shattered like glass and was replaced by a rather cute, and not at all intimidating, silver-eyed glare. I saw you manhandle a bunch of armed thugs. I figured you could handle one lonely teacher, Naruto answered with a shrug, his roguish grin on full blast. Besides, it apparently all worked out in the end. Cough, the blonde sister coughed into her hand, clearly have enough with being ignored. Oh Naruto, this is my big sister, Yang. And just like that, Ruby was back to her hyper and happy self. So you're the guy that my little sister hasn't stopped talking about. I can see why. Yang's grin almost matched Naruto's perfectly, even when she leaned next to him to whisper into his ear. I think she has a crush. Yang! Ruby cried in embarrassment, her pale cheeks flushed. Yang just laughed as she rests her arm on Naruto's shoulder, idly flipping her golden hair back. She's not denying it, but who can blame her? You are pretty cute. Naruto's deep red eyes narrowed just a fraction. Now he understood what was going on. Really, he should have expected it. No girl was this flirty while their younger sister was round. Not to mention they didn't tend to make jokes about said sister having a crush on an older guy. It was admirable, the way Yang was feeling him out, but he wasn't going to be that easy to get a read on. I don't know, Naruto began, never breaking eye contact with Yang. You're pretty cute yourself. Trust me, with me you'll have a Yang and good time. So she was a lover of bad puns. Well, blondes do have more fun, Naruto shot back. I'm sure we'll have plenty of fun together. Yang moved to face Naruto, mirroring the way he rested his hand on his hip. I'm sure we'll yawn the day away. Neither of the 2 Bon noticed it, but they'd been inching closer and closer the more they went on until finally something gave way. That something came in the form of a very red-faced Ruby. Her innocent little mind couldn't handle all the painfully obvious flirting. Guys! Ruby almost regretted her decision with a pair of red and a pair of violet eyes fell upon her at the same time. The 2 blondes had united against the Little Red Riding Hood. She'd have better luck against the big bad wolf. Half an hour later, the site of Beacon Academy truly was a sight to behold, looking more like an ancient fortress than a school, and was definitely more impressive up close and person. The most prominent part of the academy was the massive tower that stood in the middle of it all, even going so far as to practically scrape the very clouds, which had several green orbs floating inside it. Yet Naruto's gaze was drawn to the main avenue they had all been dropped off on, and the massive main door that no doubt led to the rest of the school. The avenue was also marked with trees and flag-draped light poles, as well as a number of impressive aqueduct-like features and archways. Man, this place sure is something else, Naruto whistled as he stepped off the airship with Yang and Ruby, his and Ruby's cloaks blowing gently in the afternoon breeze. You can say that again. Signal has nothing on this place. Yang laughed, already thinking of all the trouble she could get up to in a place as large as Beacon. Both blondes seemed to take notice of Ruby's lack of reaction and turned to face the blackhead at almost the exact same time. Ruby, whose face was completely scarlet, absolutely refused to even look in Yang and Naruto's general direction. She'd been teased by Yang her whole life, but what she was just put through was on an entire different level. Her innocent mind would never be the same. She'd never be able to look either of the blondes in the eye again. All of her embarrassing stories, from the time she ran outside with her diaper on her head to her embarrassing first time activating her semblance, she never should have felt her room. Ruby? Hey Ruby. 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 rwby. Yang began to obnoxiously try to get her little sister's attention, even poking her in her flushed chubby cheeks each time she called her name. What? Ruby finally snapped, shooting a glare at Yang but quickly looking away with a renewed blush. I think we broke her, Naruto commented, finding his ability to match Yang's personality almost too easy. Nah, she'll be fine. Yang waved off Naruto's concerns, only for a knowing smile to form on her lips and a wink to be sent Naruto's way. Hey Ruby, doesn't that girl over there have a flaming sword? Naruto was now more than a bit confused. What was Yang trying to do? Whoosh. His answer came just moments later when Ruby took off like a squirrel with 20 shots of espresso pumped right into her veins. She was buzzing around like a little chibi fairy, going on and on about every new weapon her gray eyes fell upon. Naruto watched her with a bemused expression, his vermilion following the red and black blur without much difficulty, before she came flying back at him with rose petals in her wake. There's so many! Ruby cheered as she went flying over Naruto's shoulder, her eyes set upon a massive-looking sword that looked to be made up of no less than SI's different blades, only to suddenly come to a halt. Naruto had somehow managed to catch Ruby over his shoulder, now holding her like a sack of potatoes, without any visible strain. Not only had this impressed Yang, who lost track of the many times Ruby has sent her flying just by ramming into her, but the sudden stop had also brought Ruby back to reality. Easy there, little red, Naruto said, putting the younger girl down in front of him. Why don't you get to know the people before their weapons? Ruby flushed and looked away again, poking her two index fingers together nervously. But I really like seeing new weapons. It's like meeting new people but better. At Naruto's raised eyebrow, Yang leaned over and whispered into his ear, she doesn't like large crowds. Plus we're all older than her, and she left all her friends behind at Signal. Now he understood. Naruto had momentarily forgotten that most people raised in the kingdoms didn't have the same views as those living in the wilds. A young man, at the age of 14, was expected to work in the same conditions as a man of 30. The kingdoms didn't have this standard, and so some young people found it harder to interact with others. If Ruby was going to be of any use to him, not to mention he might gain an ally out of Yang for helping her younger sister, then Naruto would need to assist her in overcoming this little detriment to her social life. Cinderfall was a woman that craved only one thing in life. It wasn't beauty, she already had that in spades, and it wasn't to become one of those self-righteous huntresses. No, above all other things, Cinder craved power. She'd seen what kind of power her mistress commanded, not to mention she'd been on the receiving end of it for some of her earlier failings, and that's what she craved. So, when her mistress hired on a simple mercenary to help them with their goals at Beacon, Cinder just had to find out what made this Naruto Uzumaki so special. This led to her taking a bit of useful information, putting on her most appealing dress, and going over to personally give it to the man. He was ruggedly handsome, even if a little unkempt due to his time in the wilds, but it was his eyes that really gave it away. Not to mention he'd had her pinned to the wall, blade to her neck, almost faster than she could follow. Yet it was still his eyes that betrayed the power he held within, a malevolent energy that was the end of all things and came in contact with. This only made her want to know more, so she went to the one person that had eyes all across the planet. Cinder, a woman's voice spoke from the odd-looking grim floating before the yellow-eyed woman. I take it the information has been delivered? Yes, mistress, Cinder answered quickly, but I still don't understand why we need a simple mercenary. Emerald, Mercury, and myself are more than enough to bring down Beacon. The woman just sighed, her glowing red eyes shining with irritation. Don't beat around the bush and ask what you really want to know. What makes him so special? Why'd we hire him? Her mistress grinned, she actually grinned. My dear Cinder, if that's all you wanted to know then you should have just asked. The grim creature reaches out with one of its tendrils and touched Cinder's forehead. In fact, let me show you. Cinder allowed her mind to be flooded with one single even that took place just a few months ago, and by the end of it she fell to her knees. Her yellow eyes were wide in shock, horror, and sheer awe. Her legs even ended up giving out after a few short moments, not to mention her cheeks were flushed as sheer desire. She wanted that power, even if it meant claiming the man it belonged to. Slowly Cinder got back to her feet, ignoring the satisfied look her mistress was shooting her way, and walked away with a single image burned into her mind for the rest of her life. A creature, made entirely out of a hellish red energy, tore through hordes and hordes of Grimm out in the vast desert. 4 strange tales were soon turned to 6. The bone from the slaughtered Grimm seemed to liquefy before forming around the creature like some kind of skeleton. When the newly formed skull formed, in the shape of a fox's, glowing white circles could be seen in the place of eyes and a savage-looking maw replaced where a mouth should be. Then it roared. Amazing. Chapter 5. The next morning found Naruto waking up in a sleeping bag of all things, which was already much softer than a desert cave, but was slightly surprised to find he wasn't the only one. Yang, who had cuddled next to Ruby like a mother bear, had also apparently just woke up. At almost the same time the two blondes stretched, the sound of their joints popping being heard by the other, but the way Yang's tank top lifted up to reveal her toned stomach was a welcome sight to the blonde Branwen. They both just grinned at each other from their respective spots. Yang was more than happy to ogle Naruto's bare chest and the defined scars that no doubt had some great stories behind them. So, Naruto began as they both ended up walking towards the locker room, leaving behind their fellow new students that wanted to sleep in. Think this place has a gym? Yang asked with a grin, getting a matching one in turn. Early morning workout to get the blood pumping? Yang wrapped her arm around his shoulder. Is there any other way to start the day? I could think of a few. Yang actually got caught off guard but that one, although she quickly hid it behind a loud laugh. Where have you been all my life? It's like our personalities are in sync. Kicking ass and taking names. As it turns out, since they didn't already have so much in common already, Yang and Naruto also trained with the same amount of intensity. Even though Yang trained for power, which was reflected by her strong core and well-toned arms, Naruto was more than a little impressed to see she didn't neglect her speed or endurance all that much. More often than not, fighters that went for power couldn't often do marathon fights. How are you so flexible? Yang asked as she delivered another bone-shattering punch to the heavy bag mounted in front of her, all the while watching Naruto practically do the splits while stretching his legs. What can I say? Naruto grunted. My mom was a flexible fighter, and she made sure I was one too. I get where you're coming from. My old man was the brawler for his old team. Now I hit like a train. Yang laughed as she delivered another series of gabs, which not only pushed the bag back but also the metal frame it hung from. I can see that, Naruto laughed. Note to self, don't get hit by those fizz sever. Ya sounds a bit nervous there. Don't worry, I won't break you too much, Yang said with grin and a wink. Naruto just laughed again, a laugh that wasn't part of the mask he'd been using since he got to Beacon, and jumped to his feet. With his stretching over with, Naruto walked over to where Yang was going to town and began beating into his own bag. Unlike Yang, who went for straightforward attacks, Naruto mixed in a variety of both punches and kicks. It was clear to the both of them where they stood in power and versatility. Little did either of them know that a black-haired girl, with a black bow in her equally black hair, had also woken up early and followed the two blondes from the shadows. Clutches tightly in her hands was a book titled Ninjas of Love, but her illuminated yellow eyes never wavered from the two training blondes. Her cheeks flushed slightly. Blondes with abs were definitely her type. Hey, you feel like someone's watching us? The black-haired girl vanished into the shadows, like a ninja. 1 hour later, which had been more than enough time for the two blondes to get properly warmed up, and the first batch of new recruits had been led out to a large cliffside overlooking a massive forest the likes of which many of them had never seen before. Naruto could best describe it as a sea of emerald surrounded by towering gray mountains, and off in the distance was what looked to be a man-made structure. Red eyes narrowed slightly in an attempt to make out what it could possibly be, only for a head of long blonde hair to suddenly abstract his view. Yang stood there, Ruby struggling to escape the headlock her sister had her in, and held out her scroll for Naruto to take. It's for our dad, Yang answered Naruto's unasked question, tightening her grip when Ruby nearly escaped, and gave him a wink. I'll owe you one. Naruto just chuckled and took the offered scroll. It was already set to the camera function. I'll remember that. Yang, everyone's looking. Sure enough, everyone in their group, including the headmaster and headmistress, had stopped to look upon the trio with mostly bewildered looks. Glinda Goodwitch herself looked like she was about to pop a blood vessel, especially with the menacing purple aura glowing around her. Also, the glare she was sending Naruto's direction clearly showed that she still remembered the disrespect he showed her just a few days ago. Although it was Ojin, the very man Naruto had been sent to kill, that looked more amused than irritated or angered by the trio. His gaze had zoned out, a fond smile forming on his face, and Naruto suddenly got the feeling he was now looking at a completely different person, like a subtle shift in the wind. Please don't mind us, Ojin spoke up, his voice seemingly distant but somehow sinking into everyone's very bones. It's rather refreshing to see two children wanting to make their parents smile. Glinda looked like she wanted to protest. This was far outside what was allowed, but one look from Ojin was all it took to crush any approaching argument. Naruto silently took note of this, but nonetheless brought his attention to the happily posing Yang and the very embarrassed Ruby. He silently wondered if Raven would also like a picture, seeing as this was the academy she'd gone to, but then he remembered what type of woman she was. It was also at this point that Ojin began his little speech, the one he gave to each and every group of new students the moment they arrived on the cliff. He'd given it to Galindo when she was still his student, to Crow and Raven, and so many others that he'd nearly forgotten their names. It was meant to both tell them their objective, which he tended to change every couple of years, and warn them of the dangers they would be facing. This was no longer a game, they would have to be ready. For years, you've trained to become warriors, Ashbin began, watching as each member of this group stepped upon square tiles evenly spaced out into a straight line, and today, your abilities will be evaluated in the Emerald Forest. Now, sure, many of you had heard rumors about the assignment of teams. Well, allow us to put an end to your confusion. Each of you will be given teams today, Glinda interrupted, which was apparently to be expected seeing as Ashbin didn't react in the slightest, and Naruto could have sworn he heard Ruby's mind break just a little bit. Ashbin continued without a second thought, these teammates will be with you for the rest of your time here at Beacon, so it's in your best interest to be paired with someone with whom you can work well with. Naruto and Yang both looked at each other at the same time and grinned, which actually made Ashbin shudder just a little bit. He remembered what Yang's father had been like. He's constantly reminded of what her mother is like, and the thought of her pairing up with someone like Naruto was a bit frightening. That being said, the first person you make eye contact with after landing will be your partner for the next 4 years. Ruby's cry of horror and outrage could be heard by all, but at this point who could blame her? Ruby looks like she's about to have a panic attack, Naruto whispered to Yang, who just nodded with a slightly concerned look on her face. After you've partnered up, make your way to the northern end of the forest. You will surely meet various Grimm on your path. Do not hesitate to destroy everything in your path, or you will surely be killed. Some of the other new recruits sobered up rather quickly, but it was those that didn't they caught Ashbin's notice. Naruto decided to tune out the rest of Ashbin's little speech. He got the gist of what they needed to do and would get it done. After all, it helps when your own mother managed to complete this task single-handedly, and did end up getting a partner till after she'd already claimed her own relic. She said it was because she didn't want anyone slowing her down, and so she blindfolded herself for the entire mission. As a young boy, Naruto had been awed by his mother's ability to do a mission without her sight, but the gap in skill between them had closed much over the following years. Now, everyone take your positions, was the last thing Naruto heard from Ashbin, taking the young Branwen out of his daydreaming. I'll be on the lookout for you, Whiskers, said Yang as she put on a pair of aviator sunglasses. You'll have to catch me first, gorgeous, Naruto shot back as he took his own ready stance. His feet spread apart, while his left hand gripped the sheath of his sword and his right hand gripped the hilt. Naruto was sent flying into the air not seconds later, his cloak flapping in the wind as he went up and up into the sky. It was only when he reached the height of his arc that Naruto folded his arms close to his body and locked his legs together. He moved faster on the ground, so the best course of action would be to get to the ground as quickly as also meant he have to be able to slow his landing so that the impact wouldn't kill him, which was easier said than done. Faster and faster the treetop canopy rose up to greet him, and it was at this moment that Naruto acted. Both of his garments lashed out in front of him, his hands held up so that the grapple device hidden beneath them could fire. 2 hooks, attached to the gauntlets by reinforced wire, shot down and dug into one of the thick tree branches below. Naruto's aura flashed around his arms and shoulders, reinforcing them for what was about to happen. He flew past the large branch and waited for the moment for the wire to catch him, and when it did he felt like his arms were nearly dislocated. His forward momentum made him spin around through the air, but Naruto managed to correct himself mid-flight and actually land on the tree branch itself. The hooks detached from the branch, and a mechanical device inside his gauntlets reeled the wires back in. It wasn't the best type of landing, but it got the job done. Note to self, find a better way to survive falling several thousand feet from the sky, Naruto grunted as he rotated his shoulders, feeling no lasting damage, but it still kind of stung. The sound of someone cheering, followed by weapons fire, was the only warning Naruto had before Yang suddenly went flying over him, laughing like a mad woman the whole time. Naruto just shook his head in exasperation, wondering if she'd always been this excitable, but he had a mission to complete first. So, after taking a moment to figure out which way was north, Naruto jumped off the tree branch and took off deeper into the forest. Tree after tree flew past Naruto as he continued to race through the forest, passing Grimm of all shapes and sizes until he had a practical horde of them right on his tail. They were anything too bad, at least nothing he couldn't deal with on his own, but they would be a pain once he actually got to the temple. It would probably be best to deal with them now, but Naruto still felt that he had some ground to make up. After all, if Yang was able to get so far ahead of him, and who's to say the others hadn't already? What, you want some too? Naruto heard right as he burst into another clearing, his eyes laser-focused on the massive Ursa, before he shot forward and cut the creature in half with a quick slice of his sword. Blinking for a moment, Naruto's red eyes met the bright yellow eyes of a dark-haired girl, who had a bow tie in her hair. Meanwhile, the dark-haired girl's eyes locked with the temperamental Yang's. Normally this wouldn't be a problem, aside from the fact that it all happened at the same time, and so nobody knew who their partner was going to be. Leave it to Yang to still be focused on the fact that her kill was just stolen. I could have taken him, Yang said, putting her hands on her hips, but the dark-haired girl just rolled her eyes. And the rest of the forest while you are at it, Naruto commented as he flipped his katana into a reverse grip and slid it back into its sheath. Hey, I'm not that bad. At the same time, Naruto and the dark-haired girl looked over at the pulverized Ursa that Yang had previously punched into oblivion. Anyway, the dark-haired girl finally spoke up. Who is whose partner? Both blondes glanced at each other before simply shrugging their arms, earning them an exasperated look. Does it really matter? I mean, we're in a forest full of Grimm and just trying to survive. Let's let the teachers sort out this mess, Naruto said with a shrug of his shoulders, just before the small horde that was following him burst into the clearing. Friends of yours? Yang teased. What can I say? These things just love me. I should have just stayed up in the trees, the dark-haired girl said as she readied her weapon. My name is Blake, by the way. I'm Naruto and this is Yang. It's a pleasure to fight by your side today, he said in a carefree tone, getting into his ready stance. Oh yeah, now this is what I call a party. Fire exploded out of Yang as she punched her fists together, her gauntlets now reloaded. The Grimm roared in challenge and charged the three hunters in training, but little did they know that this would be their last days alive. For a legend was born this day, and would be remembered for years to come. Yang charged forward with a gleeful war cry of her own, shooting at the Grimm until they got within striking range, and the punch she delivered to one unlucky Beowulf was strong enough to shatter its head like a melon. This unfortunately left the blonde boxer well and truly open for the other Grimm to flank her from both sides. Or that would have been the case had Naruto not suddenly appeared on her right, cleaving another wolf in two with a powerful two-handed downward swing of his katana, and Blake doing much the same with her own unique weapon. Naruto nimbly dodged a clawed swipe at his head, ducking down and spinning into a low crouch while his blade glided through the Grimm's soft flesh. His cloak shifted as he did so to reveal the hilt of one of his two daggers, which was gripped moments later and slammed into the eye of a massive Ursa. Another loud roar alerted him to three different wolves leaping towards him at once. Their maws was open to reveal razor-sharp and jagged teeth. Naruto just smirked at his good fortune. They were all lined up. Die! He exclaimed as his blade burst into flames and, in one single swing, Naruto decapitated all of them. This is proving to be a great fight. Grimm were so much more of a challenge than common thugs and he got to fight alongside two beautiful teenage girls. Even as he dodged and flipped over numerous other Grimm, Naruto still cut side of Yang and Blake fighting their own battles. Yang was like a tank that liked to punch things, and had been laughing this entire time. Blake, on the other hand, was like a silent killing machine. Her weapon of choice, which seemed to be a gun, a slightly shorter than normal katana, and a kozurigama. She was nimble as well, having led more than a few of the Grimm to the edge of the clearing where she could use the trees to her advantage. She got the high ground on one of the branches first, using a weapon like a grappling hook with a rather durable ribbon tied to it, and used the Grimm's slower speed against them. Blake would have made a good bandit, or at least Naruto liked to think so. On and on they thought, the Grimm forcing them closer and closer together until they were eventually making up different style team attacks just to stay mobile. Naruto's favorite one was when he had given Yang the end of his grapple and Blake had done the same at the end of her ribbon. The blonde bombshell then proceeded to spin them both around while they used their katanas to slice apart the Grimm before they ever got close. She would then let them both go, and the fight would start again. In the end of it there was only one Grimm remaining, poor little Ursa with nowhere left to run. Naruto, Blake, and Yang all stood on three different sides of the creature. Black smoke and decaying Grimm bodies littered around them. They each took their ready stance. The Ursa let out a whimper, and then they attacked. Blake went low, taking the creature's legs out from under it by literally cutting them off. Naruto went high, spinning through the air like a maelstrom of blades, removing its arms with two devastating strikes. Finally, to top it all off, Yang once again propelled herself forward with a blast from her weapons, flying through the air with another happy cry. Her face slammed into the creature's face, and it was quite literally blown to pieces. Well, that was fun. Yang laughed a tired laugh. Having to put that much effort into a fight in quite a while, and she'd be lying if she said it didn't get her a bit excited. It was entertaining. Blake tried to keep the smile off her face, focusing on sheathing her sword and attaching it to her back. We should do it again sometime. Naruto sheathed his own weapons and readjusted his cloak. As one, the trio turned and began walking north once again, the shadow of a massive Nevermore passing over them for just a split second. Yang could have sworn she saw a dash of red on the creature's back and something bright white being held in its talons. Oh well, she doubted it was anything important. As it turns out it was something rather important, for now Yang stood paralyzed as Ruby came falling out of the sky like a high-speed missile. No one had really been expecting it, especially since the trio had finally made it to the abandoned temple and was about to collect their artifact. So all Yang do was curse just seconds before her little sister slammed into her, sending them both crumbling to the ground in a heap of flailing limbs and painful groans. Naruto actually looked rather amused, but Blake on the other hand looked like she couldn't comprehend what just happened. Did she just fall out of the sky? Blake asked, for a moment thinking that the girl had somehow remained airborne ever since been launched off the cliff. It would seem that way. Naruto tried to stifle his laugh, but failed rather miserably. I'm glad you find this so funny, Yang groaned out as she struggled to sit up with a passed-out Ruby on top of her. Next time she can hit you and then we'll see if you're still laughing. Whatever Naruto was about to say next was cut off by the roar of another Ursa, only for an explosion of some kind to hit its back and for it to fall over dead. Riding on the back of the now dead creature was an orange-haired girl with a white and black top and a pink skirt. Walking up from behind the dead Grimm was a young man with long black hair ending in almost all green uniform. Naruto thought he looked like the wannabe ninja. Nora, please don't do that again, The green-wearing teen huffed out, clearly out of breath from whatever torment he'd just been put through by his orange-haired containing. The orchard girl had apparently rushed past Naruto and snatched the knight chess piece he was about to grab. "Oh, look at Pony, Nora!" the long-haired teen shouted, this time with a harsher edge to his voice, but the girl just giggled and gave a mock salute. "Coming Ren, did that girl just ride all the way here on the back of an Ursa?" Blake was starting to wonder if she should have just stayed home. It would have been so much more peaceful. Young tried to speak, having just barely managed to pick yourself up off the ground while Ruby was slowly coming back to the waking world. "Hey, what's that over there?" Naruto asked, pointing to where he saw some trees being knocked down, just as a familiar redhead came bursting to the forest with the Deathstalker right on her heels. Did she run all the way here with the Deathstalker chasing after her? Yang looked like she was about to explode, which she did end up doing about 3 seconds later. Would everyone just shut the hell up for 5 seconds? Is that so much to ask? Just 5 seconds of peace and quiet so my head would stop splitting like a piece firewood thrown into a volcano. Blake actually jumped back a bit at Yang's sudden outburst, having been taken by surprise when her hair literally caught on fire and her eyes became a vibrant red. "Easy there, gorgeous. No need to have a meltdown." Naruto, apparently having more guts than all of them combined, actually patted the still flaming gang on her shoulder. Of course she also dodged the reflexive punch she sent towards his face, moving his head slightly to the side but never breaking eye contact with her. Red and Red stared into each other before the girl's eyes suddenly reverted back to the normal lilac color. Yang at least had the decency to blush after nearly taking off her teammate's head. "Sorry, don't worry about it. It's not the first time the girls tried to take off my head and I doubt it'll be the last," Naruto said, waving his hand back and forth nonchalantly. "Ouch, my head," and Ruby had finally come back to the land of the living, clutching her head in pain as she slowly sat up. "Hey little sis, you okay?" Yang asked as she knelt down next to Ruby, already going into her infamous mother hen mode. "I think so, but where's Weiss?" Ruby asked, drawing confused looks from pretty much everyone around her, all the while everyone still ignored the redhead being chased by the Grim in the background. "Who's Weiss?" Naruto asked, only for him to be answered by another scream from up above them. As it turns out, Weiss was a girl he saw before that was in all white and she was currently falling from the sky in a less graceful manner than even Ruby. Naruto just clicked his tongue in irritation, crouched down to tighten the muscles in his legs, before suddenly flinging himself up towards the falling princess. In no time at all his right arm was looped underneath her knees while he supported her back in his right. "Hey, you falling my way?" Naruto asked with a rather cheesy grin, getting both a surprised and flustered look on Weiss' face. Naruto landed on the ground with barely even a rattle of his armor, making sure to absorb most of the impact himself that way Weiss wouldn't accidentally be thrown out of his arms. The now flustered white-themed girl wasted no time in pretty much jumping out of his arms, before leveling one of the most icy glares he'd ever seen at him. "I had everything under control," Weiss shouted, before turning her icy glare upon Ruby. "And you? I can't believe you just abandoned me up there. I can't believe I even agreed to go up on that thing. I said to jump." Ruby tried to argue, only to wince when her throbbing head practically vibrated some more. "What sane person jumps off the back of the Nevermore?" "Hey, back off my little sister," Yang butted in. "This doesn't concern you. My fist is going to concern your face if you don't back off." As if to reinforce her threat, both of Yang's gauntlets made a cocking sound and a round was loaded into the chamber. "Loud noises!" Naruto suddenly shouted over all of them, even going so far as to draw his sword and ignite it just to get their attention. The 3 arguing girls jumped at Naruto's sudden intervention, even Blake jumped a little bit, and just stared at Naruto with widened eyes. The serious intense moment was destroyed when Pyrrha was suddenly flung to the ground in front of all of them. "Great, now we can all die together," Yang huffed out, still slightly glaring at Weiss. Ruby, seeing her chance to finally prove herself in her sister's eyes, suddenly shot to her feet and charged the Deathstalker. "Not I have anything to say about it." Ruby took off before anyone even had a chance to stop her, her weapon already in its scythe form, but she apparently forgot one of the key facts about a Deathstalker. Deathstalkers were notorious for their dense armor, and it was often advised to either avoid them altogether or somehow attack their underbelly. Yet Ruby, for all her enthusiasm, thought she could defy those simple facts and tried to cleave through the thickest part of its armor. It ended much the way Naruto thought it would, with the massive weapon bouncing harmlessly off the Grim. "Ruby!" Yang cried out, already on the move to protect her sister, but they were soon overshadowed by a massive Nevermore. The Black Cat made to run away, to get to the safety of her sister's arms, but things hardly ever go the way people plan them to. Massive dagger-like feathers suddenly rained down from above upon both the girls, with one of them stabbing Ruby's cloak into the ground while the rest knocked Yang off her feet. The Deathstalker was upon Ruby in seconds, its massive stinger poised and ready to end her already short life. Ruby just closed her eyes. A high-pitched screeching noise suddenly split the air. Ruby felt something fly right past the side of her head, and a suddenly explosive shockwave hit her with enough force to not only tear her cloak, but send her flying back to Yang. Yang just sat there on the ground, her little sis slumped in her arms, but the sight before her was so much more distracting. "You bastards just don't know when to quit, do you?" Naruto was now standing where Ruby had once been, his arm outstretched and the ground before him was completely uprooted. moments ago. Damn it, I can't let this happen. Naruto roared in his mind, his legs already moving to push him towards Ruby. Naruto didn't even know what he was going to do once he got to her, but he just knew he had to do something. With each step he took, the stinger came closer and closer to Ruby. He knew he would never make it on time. I'll help you out, but you lo me own. Naruto was suddenly standing in between Ruby and the Deathstalker, a familiar ball of chaotic red energy spinning in his hands, and he didn't even hesitate. He slammed the ball into the Grimm's armor-covered face, right in between its multiple eyes, and allowed the ball to shoot from his hands like a cannon. The ground before him was atomized by the attack, its size growing to the point that it completely swallowed the Deathstalker, and for a moment everything went red. No, holy shit, was all Yang could say, watching as Naruto stood up straight before turning back to look at her. Their eyes met once more before Naruto's aura suddenly flashed. His eyes rolled to the back of his head, and he collapsed onto the ground with a dull thud. Naruto, far away from Beacon Academy, in a land ruled by grim and shadows, the queen herself sat upon her ebony throne with an all-too-pleased smile on her face. Her already glowing red eyes flashed with power and seemed to refocus themselves. But she was no longer looking at her throne room. No, her mind had reached out to an already ancient Nevermore many thousands of miles away after her connection to a long-buried Deathstalker had been abruptly destroyed. Despite what most believed, a Grimm did not truly die after its body was turned to little more than ash and smoke. The very essence of her wonderful creatures instead returned to her to be reformed at a later date. There had only ever been two individuals with the kind of power to actually destroy her creatures in their entirety. It seems you don't have quite the control I thought you did, over that power of yours. Salem purred as she forced the Nevermore to ignore its baser instincts, and remain away from the hunters in training, instead making it watch as the blonde-haired daughter of Raven ran towards her unknown brother. Don't worry, unlike Ozma, I'll show you the truth once we finally meet. So rest for now, little bandit prince, you've quite the journey ahead of you. Raven watched from the shadows of the nearby ruined temple, one that was suspended over a massive gorge, as a truly heartwarming sight happened before her eyes. Her son had become so strong since the last time she'd seen him. His control over his destructive semblance was something she'd always feared he'd never achieve, and he'd used that newfound power to protect his family. She'd seen the way he interacted with Yang since they met in the forest, which was about the same time that Raven herself had managed to get to Beacon from Patch. If she'd known Naruto's objective was to get into Beacon, then she would have just teleported to Yang herself, but it didn't really matter at this point. Although overhearing them flirting was a bit strange, she just figured to each their own. You also take after Mama's temper, Raven said with a smirk, feeling a little proud of her daughter when she threatened that Weiss girl for yelling at her sister. I'm sorry I couldn't be there for you, but I couldn't let Ojban turn your brother into another weapon like Crow. Speaking of her traitor of a brother, the sound of someone landing next to her was a bit annoying. This was naturally followed by the smell of a drunk homeless person that very much needed a bath. Honestly, their mother should have beaten him more. I'm surprised to see you here. By all the gods in existence, he even sounded drunk. What, can't a mother check in on her child from time to time? Best to keep up the lie she told him about Naruto being dead, lest he report to the one holding his leash. Normally I'd say no, but well you're you, Crow wasn't wrong. She wasn't exactly Mother of the Year when it came to Yang, which was something she'd need to fix if she wanted to make her family whole again. Don't you have a master to go lick the boots of? I'm sure he's missing his loyal dog right about now. Okay, so she was a bit defensive. Love you too, sis, but we've actually got a bit of a problem. Crow nodded in the direction of the massive Nevermore just watching the hunters from high above them, its eyes glowing bright red. Why would that witch be interested in the latest batch of Ojban's child soldiers? It stung a bit to refer to her two children so coldly, but appearances must be maintained. Does it really matter? No, I guess it doesn't. Raven shook her head before glancing at her little brother. Shall we? Some old-fashioned Branwen family bonding. Crow just grinned, the same type of mocking grin Naruto had. I thought you'd never ask. Two birds took off into the sky. The Nevermore never knew what hit it. Chapter 6. The school nurse had been watching over him almost since the moment her little wolf had been brought into the infirmary by his two new partners, because apparently that was a thing now, and Raven was quickly growing irritated with the woman. The bandit queen had half a mind to just knock the nurse out, lock her in a closet, and actually be able to check up on the son she hadn't seen in practically an entire year. Yet she pulled in that legendary Branwen temper, which apparently her daughter had inherited, and let the middle-aged woman actually go about doing her job. Besides, Raven had spotted no less than 5 cameras hidden throughout the room, and it would already be bad enough once Crow tells Ojban she stopped by. Plus, with the information she managed to squeeze out of her drunk little brother, her little wolf had apparently changed his name and fabricated false records just to get into Beacon. He was on a job, there was no doubt about that, but just what kind would be hard to figure out. After all, there weren't many people with the balls to send someone into Ojban's lair and create such a detailed background for their infiltrator. Of course, she told Crow she was just making sure her daughter's new teammates weren't weak. The Belladonna girl was apparently ex-White Fawn, so she at least had some combat experience, and the drunk bought into it so easily. Like Raven would have to worry about her daughter at this point, even with Taeyang's rather lax training. She taught Naruto well enough that he would protect anyone that was on his side. Although the question still remained as to if Naruto would remain on Yang and Blake's side once his mission came to a head, Raven knew what she had to do to ensure her children didn't come to blows, but not just yet. She still had some time left. Ugh, my head. Raven's eyes shot over to her son, knocking her out of her scheming daydream, to find he was finally waking up. Oh, you're awake? Raven rolled her eyes at the nurse, stating the obvious. I'll inform the headmaster. Raven scoffed. This woman wasn't even making sure her charge wasn't in any pain. Honestly, had the standards dropped that low since her own time at this prison of a school? Although she knew Naruto could fight through just about any amount of pain, that wasn't the fucking point. Oh look, a raven. Naruto suddenly said, looking right up at his mother hidden up on one of the stone trusses, in her bird form. So he spotted, or at least suspected, the cameras hidden throughout the room and was playing it safe. She squawked a bit, and gave a cheeky wave of her wing down at her little wolf, although it looked like he was turning into a big bad wolf now. Naruto just smiled softly before going back to staring at the door, making it look like he was just waiting for Ajin to show up. While waiting, Naruto also took the time to inspect himself for any injuries he may have gotten after passing out. He could only assume one of the others, most likely Yang, had carried him out of the Emerald Forest and to safety. Now the only real questions were who are his teammates, and who was his partner. The choices were clearly between Yang and that Blake girl, or it could be that they got paired together seeing as Naruto had been passed at the time. Naruto thought back to how he acted when that Death Stalker was about to kill Ruby, especially the way he just charged forward without a second thought. He didn't even have a plan at the time. Sure, his sword was sharp, he did take care of it every single day, but there was no way he would have been able to cut through its heavy armor with just the blade alone. Then there was that voice that spoke to him, a voice he hadn't heard since leaving the Branwen tribe, and that the voice somehow had control over his very actions. At least enough control to make him move faster than he thought he could call upon his semblance without him knowing. It was a mystery to be sure, and one that he intended to find the answers to. It's good to see you're awake, Mr. Uzumaki. Came the aged and distant voice of Ajin as he walked through the infirmary doors with 4 other individuals, 3 of which she already knew. Well, what can I say? I guess I just don't know how to stay down. Naruto joked in a sarcastic manner, giving the headmaster a sheepish grin while scratching the back of his head. That's putting it lightly, said Yang, one of the people that had walked in with Ajin, while Blake, Pira, and an unknown blonde walked up to one side of his bed. Oh, were you worried about me? Naruto asked in a teasing manner. What, how am I supposed rewards you, for saving my little sister, if you died or something? What kind of reward we talking about? Naruto wiggled his eyebrows in a suggestive manner, which ended up making Pira, of all people, blush. Raven, on the other hand, was torn between being mildly disturbed at how the unknown siblings were practically eye-humping each other, and comparing it to those books that she used to swipe from summer back when they both went to Beacon. Those were the days before everything went to shit. Are you guys going to be like this the whole time? Blake asked, her cheeks mildly flushed. Oh, don't be jealous. Yang grinned as she wrapped her arm over Blake's shoulder. We can always just make it a Blake sandwich, as fascinating as this conversation is. Ajin cut in, reminding everyone that he was also in the room and they were talking about sex on school grounds, in front of the headmaster himself. I believe we have other matters to discuss. Thank the gods. The unknown blonde male, who Naruto could have sworn he'd seen somewhere, sighed in gratitude. Right, sorry? The funny thing about it was that Yang didn't sound sorry at all, even when she mirrored the way Naruto nervously scratched the back of his head. So what's the news and who are these 2? Naruto already knew who Pira was, but decided to play it safe just to be sure. The news, as you put it, is that the 5 of you are in a very interesting situation. The fact of the matter is that there has never been a situation where 3 people have made eye contact at the exact same time. So I've been left with one of 2 options, which I decided to let you all choose amongst yourselves. Ajin explained, resting both his hands atop his cane while he made direct eye contact with Naruto. And what are our 2 choices? Naruto asked, his eyes sharpening at Ajin's challenging gaze. Your first option is that you remain a 5-man team, but will be expected to meet a higher criteria than your fellow classmates. Your individual tests will have more questions on them, your combat analysis will have a higher bar set, and the teachers will generally expect more out of you, said the headmaster, his eyes never breaking away from Naruto's despite noticing how the other 4 people in the room seemed to deflate slightly. And the other option? This time it was Blake that asked, a slight hiss behind her words. Your other option, Ms. Belladonna, is that one of you volunteers to leave the school and wait until next year for re-enrollment. The other is noticeably stiffened at that, with none of them wanting to volunteer to wait another year. Naruto felt his legendary Branwen temper spike ever so slightly, but he held it back. Something was off about this. There was no way a situation such as theirs hadn't happened before. Or a situation where there was an extra student, and no teams available. Then there's no real choice here. Naruto said as he got up out of his bed and stood next to his new teammates. We've all worked too hard, in our own ways, to get into Beacon Academy. We fought tooth and nail through the Emerald Forest. We got your stupid relics, so I say bring it on. The more you throw at us, the stronger we're gonna get. The infirmary was silent after that. Even Raven was a bit stunned at how bold her son was, and after a few moments of awkwardness Ajin actually started clapping. The other 4 looked at each other, not really sure what was going on, but Naruto just sent the old man a confident grin. Well said, Mr. Uzumaki, well said indeed. So does that mean you'll tell us what you're really playing at here? Naruto asked, getting a smile and nod from the headmaster. I'm so confused here. The blonde male said, looking slightly paler than he had a moment ago. This wasn't about seeing which one of us would choose to leave Beacon Academy. The headmaster here was testing our character. If we all chose to stay together, then that would mean that we had a strong sense of loyalty, and wouldn't abandon one another when things got tough. If one of us chose to give up our chance of becoming a hunter, then that would show him that we were willing to make a hard decision for others' sake. Naruto explained what he had figured out. You are half right, Mr. Uzumaki. The other reason I asked such questions was to see which one of you would speak out about it the loudest. Which one of you had the courage to stand up to me, to choose for everyone else the best course of action. Essentially, I was seeing which one of you would make the best leader for this most unorthodox team. The reactions he got were rather priceless. No way. Yan looked a little dumbfounded. Man, you really had me going there. Tell me about it. The other three said as one, all looking relieved. So I guess congratulations are in order. Ashbin said, turning his gaze back to Naruto, for becoming the first leader of a 5-man squad. Naruto just grinned. He was finally on the inside. As it would turn out, trying to fit a 5-man team into a room that can only fit maybe 4 people wasn't the best idea. Not only did they have to bring another bed out of storage, which was all the way down in the basement, but they also had to find some way to fit all their belongings. On the plus side, they did wind up in a room across from Yang's little sister and her team, a team named RWNR, so they ended up copying Ruby's idea and just making bunk beds, with the extra beds simply being shoved into the corner. Although, unlike Ruby's team, their bunk beds were actually structurally sound and didn't look like they were about to fall over at a moment's notice. This just left setting up all their personal belongings, which out of all of them Naruto had the least amount. Blake was given all 4 of the bookshelves, not to mention she also took the bottom bunk to put the rest of her books underneath it. Yan pretty much claimed half the bathroom with all of her hair products. Pira managed to limit herself only one dresser and a stand for her weapons and armor. John, who was the other blonde male that Naruto barely recognized, was forced to stuff all of his comic books into his own dresser and stored his weapons under his bed. Then there was Naruto, who called dibs on the single bed since he was the team leader, and all he really did was claim a single dresser and lean the majority of his weapons up against the wall. You think they would have given us bigger rooms? Blake commented as she sat casually on her bed with an open book in hand. I know, right? It's not like they have a giant school with plenty of room. Yan said sarcastically, rolling her lilac eyes. I'm sure they gave us the best that they had. Pira tried to defend the staff, although honestly she would have preferred a larger room as well. It's not that bad. Yeah, we could have waited until tomorrow to unpack, right before class started, Naruto pointed out as he sat on his own bed, sword resting on his lap, with a cloth running over the blade. Man, that would have sucked. We would have been so late. Now that Yan thought about it, didn't Ruby and her team pretty much go right to bed after the exam? I'm sure we would have been fine, said John as he laid down on his bottom bunk, reading one of his many comic books. Better safe than sorry. Naruto shrugged his shoulders before looking over at Yang and Blake. So what happened after I passed out? The blonde and black-haired girl looked at each other before turning back to face Naruto. Not much really. That sounded so convincing, Naruto said with a flat look, clearly not believing his two partners. Well, Yang carried you back, Blake began. We got attacked by more Beowulfs, Yang continued. John got carried away by a bunch of Nevermores. Pira had to save him, twice. John further hid his face behind his comic book at that, and we fought our way back to the cliff. The two finished at the same time, glancing at each other again. Naruto knew they were clearly leaving out relevant details, whether out of embarrassment or shame, but decided not to press the matter. They were still a new team after all. He was the team leader, and they'd eventually have to learn how to trust one another. The best way to earn someone's trust is to go in the battle with them. Maybe that's what they should do, to further learn how they all fight together. He knows that Yan likes to do early morning workouts, so maybe he could convince them all to do some early morning training before classes start. Plus he had no idea how John fought. Right, if that's all that happened. On another note, there's still the matter of your reward for saving my little sister. Yan instantly switched back into her flirtatious mode, which drew Naruto's attention. Her carefree attitude, the way she had no qualms about flirting with someone she barely knew, and a few other smaller details led him to believe he was some kind of defense mechanism, a way for her to deflect questions or get out of a situation that she found uncomfortable. It's fine, Yang, I'm sure she would have done the same for me. Yang just ignored him and skipped over to his bed, her hands clasped behind her back as she looked down at him with a grin. The other occupants of the room just looked at each other, unsure if they should leave or not. Oh, shut up and take your reward. Yang suddenly bent down and kissed Naruto on his cheek, something that normally wouldn't have made her so flustered and yet it did anyways. So thanks. Naruto just paused in the act of polishing his blade, feeling his own cheeks heat up a bit, before looking up at Yang with an all-too charming smile. You're welcome. The rest of the newly formed team spent the rest of the day just hanging out together, talking about their pasts, what they did in school, and just getting to know one another. Blake and John were a little vague with their stories, often glossing over details, but by the end of the day they were all just a little bit closer. It was only later that night, once everyone had finally fallen asleep, that Naruto's red eyes snapped open and he got up out of his bed. Outside, now standing on the ledge just outside his dorm room window, Naruto's gaze traveled up to the actual roof of the student dorms. It didn't take him long to scale up the side of the building, even without proper climbing equipment, and when he did reach the top he found someone familiar waiting for him. Raven had been meditating for the last hour or so, waiting for her son to eventually seek her out, and actually let a smile grace her features when she heard him approach. "Hi, Mom." What else could Naruto say? He did leave in the middle of the night without even so much as a note, and now suddenly his mom had found him. Raven just got to her feet and gave him an appraising look, noting every single change that he had gone through since leaving, especially the new scars that she could see. She then walked closer to her son, who is now taller and had a build similar to his father, even if it was a bit leaner. "You got taller." She grinned up at him. "What can I say? I've been eating my greens." Raven did her best not to snort at his lame excuse. "I see you've also been getting into fights," Raven pointed out, tracing her hand along one of the scars on Naruto's arm, wondering what kind of grim gave it to him. "I've been winning them too, just like he taught me." Naruto smirked mirrored Raven's own, but the elder Branwen frowned suddenly. Without warning, Raven wrapped both her arms around her son's neck and pulled him down into a hug, which nearly sent Naruto off balance. Instead of pulling away, like any teenage boy would have done, Naruto instead returned the hug. He did miss her after all. "I'm sorry for leaving," Naruto whispered, but Raven just shook her head. "No you're not, you take after me." Naruto pulled back and nodded his head. "You're right. I'm sorry for not keeping in touch." "I know you are. But it's okay now." The mother and son stepped away from one another. "So what brings you all the way out here to Beacon? I'm pretty sure I taught you enough to wipe the floor with any of these children." "I took some work as a mercenary not long after I left the tribe, mostly for source of income. My first job landed me in the middle of the desert for quite some time, but I made it out, and there was someone else looking to hire me. Now here I am," Naruto explained, not knowing how much he should tell Raven and if she might disagree with his full job description. "Someone hired you to infiltrate Beacon Academy? Have you met this person?" Raven knew she might be jumping to conclusions, but she didn't choose to destroy her family to keep her son out of Ashbin's hands, just to have him wind up in Salem's. "Nope, it's all pretty shady, but the money is real." "Do you even know if it was a man or a woman?" She knew Salem had minions of her own, but at least Raven would have someone to look out for. "Sounds like an old man, one of those rich and sophisticated types. You know, the ones our tribe usually steals from," Naruto replied, getting a smile and a nod from Raven. "I won't ask you what your job here is. If you're anything like me then you won't tell, but at least promise me you'll be careful." Raven couldn't bear the thought of losing her son, let alone in a game played by those two monsters. "I promise you I'll handle it like a Branwen." Raven just let out a hearty laugh. "Then the school won't be standing by the time you're done. I nearly brought down one of the smaller towers when your father made me upset one day." "Oh well, I guess now I have to bring down the whole place," Naruto said sarcastically, his goal still being to become just as strong as his mom and become a worthy leader for the Branwen tribe. "So, have any pretty girls caught your eye yet?" "You know they're gonna have to be strong if you want me to accept them," Raven teased. "Well, a girl did kiss me on the cheek a few hours ago, after I saved her little sister earlier today." Raven's mind broke for a moment, her left eye twitching while she tried to remain smiling. "IZ. Mom?" Naruto asked in slight concern. "It's nothing at all. I just didn't expect you to take so much after your dad. The ladies like him a lot as well. So how's the tribe doing?" Naruto asked after slightly awkward silence. Raven moved over and sat down on the edge of the building, motioned for Naruto to join her. "Well, we got a new member, a girl that had ran away from one of the academies. She is a bit of a mess right now, but there's hope for her." They spent the next few hours talking, mostly just catching up, before Raven decided she had best leave. "I'll be sticking around Vale for a while. I've got some tribe business to attend to, so we can talk more later." While Raven was having her reunion with her long-lost son, another member of the Branwen family sat on the edge of another building not far away. Crow knew he was right in trusting his gut. There was no way Raven would just randomly show up to see how Yang was doing. Hell, he doubted she even knew her daughter was going to Beacon to begin with. At first he thought she was planning something against Oz. It wouldn't be too out of character for her. But what he saw was even more dumbfounding. "He's alive," Crow whispered, shock evident on his face as he watched what played out before him, mentally kicking himself for not recognizing his best friend's son the moment he saw him back in the Emerald Forest. Crow had his scroll out in a matter of seconds, Ashbin's number already set and ready to dial, but he paused just seconds before hitting the dial button. Raven had lied about her son's death, she'd lied to him about it. No matter how much they may not see eye to eye on most things, Raven knew family was important to Crow. Hell, he'd known about her being pregnant with Ty's kids long before the man himself. So why did she fake her own son's death just to make Crow think he was gone? Crow glanced down at the image of Ashbin on his scroll and then back at the mother and son saying their goodbyes. He remembered when Naruto's semblance came roaring to life and the way Ashbin tried to get involved in the whole thing. He remembered how Raven and Tai fought like never before over what they should do, only for Raven to vanish later that night with their son. She lied to him because she knew Crow would tell Ashbin, or Ashbin would ask Crow to spy on the boy and report back to him. Damn it! Crow cursed, taking a swig from his flask. I need to find some damn answers. Meanwhile, a small Nevermore flew above them all, its eyes glowing like never before. They were approaching the endgame. After so many lifetimes, it was almost over. Chapter 7. Naruto awoke later that morning, after maybe 4 hours of sleep, to a smiling Yang, a still waking up Blake, John putting on his uniform jacket, and Pyrrha walking out of the bathroom while trying to put her hair up her usual high ponytail. His clock was blurry, even after he narrowed his eyes to try and focus, but it was the ear-piercing sound of a whistle that really woke Naruto up. Now finding himself looking up at Yang from the ground, her smile now very smug, Naruto's eyes narrowed at the gold whistle she was waving at him. Also, judging by the looks of his other teammates, they were no more impressed than their leader was. The male Branwen slowly got to his feet, snatched the offending object out of Yang's hand, walked over to the open window, and threw it right out. He then walked back over to Yang and flicked her right on the forehead, getting a sharp yelp from his fellow blonde. No, bad Yang, Naruto chided, like she was a little puppy. But Yang just ate up their morning frustration with a big old smile on her face. Despite her interesting methods, classes start in about an hour, Blake pointed out, seeming to be more irritated by Yang's little joke than any of the others. Her bow twitched ever so slightly. Right, Naruto grunted as he walked over to his dresser and pulled out the uniform he was apparently meant to wear, only to scoff at what he saw. The black suit jacket and pants were fine, even if the gold trim was a bit much, but there was no way he was gonna wear a tie. Not only did the color clash with the rest of the uniform, but also having something wrapped around his neck was a no-go for Naruto. So after a quick shower, in which there was no hot water left, Naruto rejoined the others fully dressed, aside from the tie and him having the top 3 buttons of his shirt undone. Everyone was ready to go, even Yang and John had all their books together, and that brought a smile to Naruto's face. Yang spotted her team leader and couldn't help but admire the way he filled out his fancy-looking uniform. Well, someone looks nice. Yes, the colors suit you. Pyrrha also gave her 2 cents, trying her best to interact with her new team despite how socially awkward she felt doing so, no doubt due to her time being a world-renowned fighter at such a young age. Thanks. Whatever Naruto was about to say was cut off by a shout from across the hall. Poking their heads out into the hallway, Naruto and his team spotted Team RWNR running like a pack of Grimm was hot on their heels. As one, the 5-man team pulled out their respective scrolls, saw they still had 20 minutes before their first class, and wondered what was up with them. Then, not give seconds later, all the other new teams came rushing out into the hall with matching panicked expressions. Did we miss something? John asked as Team NYBJP, which Naruto thought was a stupid way to name teams, filed out of their room. I don't think so. Pyrrha sounded just as unsure as John. She even did a cute tilt of her head that the blonde leader found just adorable. Naruto rubbed his chin in thought before shrugging his shoulders. Let's head to class. We'll get more answers there. It was fortunate that school provided a map app for the students' personal scrolls, namely to help them find their respective classes. Otherwise Naruto had a feeling he would have never made it to the first class, which was apparently taught by an elderly man named Peter Port. The overweight teacher honestly didn't impress Naruto. Even after just sitting down with his team, who decided to take up the second highest row, Naruto spotted several fake Grimm trophies mounted on the classroom walls and even the man's personal weapon. He resisted the urge to scoff. Raven made sure her son knew that a warrior never mounts their weapon in such a brazen manner. This guy is gonna teach us about the Grimm? Yang didn't look impressed either, although she had already faced her fair share of the crazed monsters and no doubt found learning about them in a classroom to be boring. Professor Port was actually a famous huntsman back before he retired to teach here at Beacon, Pyrrha pointed out, her fingers typing away on her scroll before pulling up a 30-year-old picture and showing it to the rest of her team. Naruto, John, Yang, and Blake couldn't believe what they were seeing. It wasn't possible. The man in the picture looked like a 5 feet 8 inches Grimm killing machine, dressed in brown cargo pants, a white muscle shirt, dark brown boots, and black fingerless gloves. He had swept back black hair, a full beard, and held a massive double-sided axe in his right hand. Then, as if to top everything off, he had a Beowulf pinned to the ground with his foot alone. While the others continued to gawk at the photo, Naruto glanced back to the overweight teacher in confusion. What could have turned a warrior like that into what everyone saw standing before them? Good morning, future huntsmen and huntresses of Beacon Academy, the professor shouted, waking up the few students that had already fallen asleep. My name is Peter Port, retired huntsman, survivalist, and expert on all things Grimm. In this class I shall imprint upon you all my vast knowledge and many adventures. By the time you leave here, no Grimm will be able to stand in your way. Haha. The man's short little introduction was met by complete silence, and students once again beginning to fall asleep. Most of Ruby's team, including the girl herself, looked bored out of their minds and would rather be almost anywhere else. Naruto was paying more attention to the diagrams posted up behind the teacher that listed the traits of various Grimm they would be facing. The rest of his own team were doing various things to keep themselves entertained. "Hey," Naruto whispered, catching Blake's attention, "think we can sneak out of here and not get caught?" The bow-wearing blackhead seemed to actually consider his question for a moment, looking around for various escape routes and a way to distract the professor long enough for them all to get out without being caught. It was with a sad sigh that Blake just shook her head. She'd be able to escape just fine, but her fellow students would be left behind in this boring class. Naruto just shook his head. This was gonna be a long day. As it turns out, Naruto was wrong in that regard, because not 30 minutes into the class and the professor was already asking for volunteers to face a Grimm. This had been preceded by a rather long, not to mention boring, story about Professor Port's first time facing a Beowulf and every excruciating detail that came with it. It was during this time that one of the members of Ruby's team, Weiss he believed her name to be, began to grow slowly more and more aggravated with how the rest of her team was acting. Just watching the anger build up within her was more interesting to Naruto than the class had been. But it wasn't until Professor Port asked for volunteers that it really came to a head. The moral of the story is that a huntsman must be honorable, a huntsman must be dependable, a huntsman must be strategic, well-educated, and wise. Professor Port continued on and on, having many of the students nod their heads in agreement with his ideals. But Naruto just shook his head at the sheer absurdity of it. "So, who among yourselves believed yourselves the embodiment of these traits?" Normally Naruto would just ignore the whole situation, but so much of this was little more than BS. A huntsman doesn't need honor to defeat Grimm, and neither do they need education aside from knowing how to fight. Out in the wilds, where there are no massive cities to keep you safe from Grimm, the only thing that matters is strength and the will to act. So just before Weiss could stand up and declare that she believed herself to embody these traits, Naruto raised his hand. "I'll give it a shot," Naruto said as he eyed the massive cage that no doubt contained a Grimm of some form. Peter Port just smiled and motioned over to the cage, "Then step forward and face your opponent." "Hey, shouldn't he be allowed to get his weapons and armor first?" asked John, who didn't think it was right for his team leader to face a Grimm without at least having some form of protection. "Quite right, Mr. Ark, quite right indeed. Mr. Uzumaki, you may retrieve your weapons and armor if you so wish," Professor Port said, motioning towards the door of the classroom. But Naruto just shook his head. "I won't need them." This did get Naruto looks from everyone else, who finally woke up from their teacher-induced naps, and couldn't believe that they were hearing. Only those trained in hand-to-hand combat would be able to stand up to a Grimm like that. But even then those people tended to wield gauntlets, or some other kind of device to shield their hands. Yet Naruto just walked down the few steps it took to get to where Port was waiting for him, with his hands stuffed into his pockets the entire time. "Are you sure? It is not wise to let pride get in the way of your own self-preservation." There was something in the professor's eyes when he said that, almost like he was remembering some haunting moment in his past, but Naruto filed that away for a later date. "I'm sure," was all Naruto said, moving to stand a few feet away from the cage, which was violently shaking by this point. "You can do it, Whiskers." Yang cheered, liking that her team leader was gutsy enough to go up against the Grimm with no armor or weapons. "Be careful." Pyrrha was a lot less happy about it, but was too nice to really voice her displeasure in front of everyone. "We'll be counting on you." Blake had somehow pulled out a small flag with their team's initials on it, showing her excitement without actually displaying it in her tone or facial expressions. "Go, leader." And then there was John. Naruto still had to figure out what his fighting style was and where he would fit into their new team. The professor stood next to the cage, having taken his weapon off the wall. "Are you sure you don't wish to at least get your weapon?" "I don't need one." "Very well, let the match begin." The lock was cleaved off the cage with a single swing of his axe, allowing a Borbotusk to come charging out right at Naruto. Everyone shouted at him to jump out of the way of the charging Grimm, even his own team, but Naruto just stood his ground and took his hands out of his pockets. Right when the creature got in range, Naruto used the Grimm's face as a springboard to leap over it, sending the Borbotusk's face into the ground. Naruto landed in a small crouch before standing back up to his full height, watching as the Grimm shook its head around wildly before turning to glare at him. "An impressive dodge," the professor praised, "but how will you defeat it with no weapons?" The Borbotusk charged again, its anger blinding into the threat that stood before it, and this time Naruto didn't jump over it. He still planted his foot on the creature's face, but this time he gripped its tusks with both hands and dug its face deeper into the ground. He twisted the creature until it had no choice but to flip onto its side, allowing Naruto to place his right foot against one tusk, while he gripped the other one with both his hands. The Grimm cried out in pain as Naruto began to pull, which was followed by a sickening tearing sound as he ripped one of the tusks right out of the creature's face. "This is the truth of the matter," Naruto said as he used the tusk in his one hand to stab the creature through one of its tiny legs and keep it pinned to the ground. "Out there, beyond the safety of these walls, there are only two things that truly matter. It's not honor, it's not being dependable, nor strategic, nor educated, or even being wise," Naruto said as he planted his foot down on the Borbotusk's neck, and ripped off its other tusk. "Mr. Uzumaki," Professor Port tried to cut in, but Naruto wasn't done yet. "The two things that matter out there, when you're faced with the possibility of a Grimm attack every single day, is power." Naruto shoved the second tusk into the creature's unprotected bottom, killing it instantly, and the will to act. If you lack either of these two traits, then you won't survive long enough to be praised for the ones that Professor Port says you should have. Naruto didn't say anything else as he climbed back up the steps to his seat, ignoring the looks almost everyone was giving him. If the students were to survive the real world, the one that they came to this academy to learn how to survive in, then they couldn't let such a simple thing as honor hold them back. If they did, then they wouldn't survive, or someone they were close to would die. An interesting philosophy, Mr. Uzumaki. There was a slight bit of wariness in the old man's tone. I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Be sure to cover the assigned readings and stay vigilant. Class dismissed. Naruto was one of the first ones out of the classroom, silently cursed himself for going off like that middle class while he was supposed to be undercover. Even his transcript said that he wasn't that skilled, yet there he goes killing a Grimm with his bare hands, and he did so in front of his entire year. Yet his silent cursing was interrupted by an argument taking place just around the corner, between Ruby and her partner Weiss no less. Pausing just behind the corner, Naruto decided to listen in. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with you? Weiss shouted at her young team leader, stomping her foot on the ground in irritation. You're supposed to be our leader, but all you've been so far is a nuisance. What did I do? Ruby tried to defend herself, but Weiss was on a rampage. That's just it, you've done nothing to earn your position. Ever since I met you, you've done nothing but act like a child. You nearly got me killed by leaving me behind in the forest. You left me hanging on to a nevermore. And let's not forget how you've been this entire class. The more Weiss shouted, the more Ruby looked like she was going to break out into tears. Weiss she tried to cut in, but that just seemed to make the white-themed girl angrier. I've trained and studied for almost my entire life. All you've done is mess around on some little island no one cares about. You should have never even come to Beacon, and Ashban never should have made you a team leader. He made a mistake. Weiss continued to shout, getting more and more in Ruby's face, unaware of how the blackhead was slowly balling her hand into a shaking fist. Like you're any help. Ruby suddenly snapped, her gray eyes piercing into Weiss' very soul. Maybe instead of complaining about what I do, you should help me get better. I'm new at this. I don't know what I'm doing half the time, and you screaming at me isn't helping. I've trained ever since I was little to be like my mom who is a better huntress than I'll ever be. So don't think you're the only one that has any right to be here. Weiss stood there, more than a little stunned that Ruby actually snapped back at her. She's never had anything like this happen before. She was either the one being told what to do, in the case of her father, or she was the one telling people what to do. Now here stood a 15-year-old girl, who she just got done shouting at, and instead of submitting she challenged her. Ruby turned around to storm away, feeling more than a little drained after letting all her bottled-up emotions out, but found herself running into something surprisingly solid. Even when she was about to fall back after the sudden collision, a pair of strong hands grabbed her shoulders and kept her standing. She looked up and found Naruto, who she didn't expect to be standing there, smiling down at her. How's it going, little red? Naruto pretended to have just turned the corner. Princess? What's with all the shouting? Weiss is being mean and shouting at me. Only because you deserve it. I do not. Do too. Mean it, child. Don't call me that. Then stop acting like one. Naruto just looked back and forth between the two arguing girls, wondering if either of them was ever actually disciplined growing up. This eventually led to Naruto moving in between them and lightly smacking them both on their heads. This stopped their argument cold. Ouch, that hurt. Ruby and Weiss echoed, rubbing the backs of their heads, not even realizing that they actually just agreed on something. Are you two done? Naruto asked, looking down at them with a raised eyebrow. But, Weiss tried to cut in. You don't deserve to be team leader, you haven't earned it. That shut the white-haired girl down in a second before Naruto turned to Ruby. And you've been chosen to be a team leader, so you need to act like it. Like hell, I haven't earned it. Maybe flaring her temper at Naruto would work better than it had on Ruby. After all, he wasn't her team leader. But Hellfire eyes just narrowed at her. Really, ever since coming to Beacon, what have you done to earn the title of being a leader? From what I've observed, you like to lash out at your teammates when they don't do what you want. You are quick to anger in general. Instead of helping your leader improve, you seem to enjoy tearing her down. So tell me, how have you earned the right to lead anyone? In fact, I feel bad for any team you are assigned to lead with your current mindset. Naruto's berating reminded Weiss of her sister. And Ruby, I understand that you're new to being in charge of others, but you've been handed both a great opportunity and challenge. Being in charge of others means that you must always be thinking about their well-being. Your strengths become their strengths, and your shortcomings can also become their shortcomings. A leader must always be trying their best, both inside a boring classroom and out in the world fighting grim. Both girls shared a glance, feeling more in trouble than they ever did with their own parents, and more than a little ashamed with how they were acting towards one another. Ruby may not remember her mom, but the stories Yang told her always involved her being kind to others and understanding. Even her dad said Summer Rose was the center of their team, being able to put up with all their antics with a smile on her face. Similarly, Weiss also knew that her big sister would be appalled at how inelegantly she was voicing her grievances to what she would consider a superior officer. But I have to be the leader, I have to be the best, I'm a Schnee, Weiss whispered, quoting the last thing her father said to her before she left for Beacon. It was over a scroll call too. Here, and out there against the Grimm, it doesn't matter if you are a Schnee, a Rose, or an Uzumaki. There are too many odds against us to worry about such things. So instead of trying to show you deserve to be a good leader, why not prove to everyone you're a good person? This time Naruto just patted Weiss on her head, his gazing softening a bit. Weiss, Ruby cut in, nervously fiddling with her red cloak. Ruby? I am sorry for yelling at you, Ruby choked up a bit. Weiss herself looked a bit surprised. No one ever apologized to her before. I'm sorry for yelling at you too, and for saying you shouldn't have come here. Can I see some of the notes you took? Weiss smiled a bit and nodded her head, while the two girls slowly began to deepen their friendship, with Naruto watching over them. Another figure stood just a bit further down the hallway. Ashbin had been watching the interaction between the two girls, noting how they seemed to be at odds, and had planned to use this animosity to depart some advice upon the daughter of Summer Rose. Yet it would seem he'd been beaten to the punch, which wasn't troubling so much as a missed opportunity for the headmaster. He needed a silver-eyed warrior on his side. They were the only ones that could tip the scales of battle when it came to the Grimm and the maidens. What's your game, Mr. Uzumaki? There were two things that ran strong in the Branwen family: drinking and short tempers. Raven and Crow's parents drank to make being leaders much easier, or at least take away some of the stress. Crow drinks to forget how screwed up his life has become, ranging from the horrors he's seen to the friends he's lost. Raven, on the other hand, used to drink just to drown her misery away for a few hours before she was forced to face the cruel world once more, normally with a killer hangover. That was actually how she ended up getting pregnant with Naruto and Yang, not that she would ever tell her two children they were unplanned. It had been after a rather long and difficult mission to the Grim Lands, a mission given to her team by Ashbin when she was still blind to his true personality. Summer had been thrilled. They'd been off active duty for about a month, and even Raven had to admit that she was a bit excited to stretch her legs a bit. Naturally, that all changed when they were attacked by a pack of Sphinx with a monstrously large Alpha Sphinx leading the charge against them. That had been the first time Raven had ever seen Summer panic. Not to mention that Crow had been swallowed whole by the Alpha and somehow managed to cut his way out of the damn thing. Needless to say, the moment it looked like one of her teammates had just died, Summer Rose officially lost her shit. Even after Crow cut his way out of the beast, Summer just continued to go on a rampage the likes of which none of them had ever seen before. Her hunting spear was like a blur as it drilled through Grim after Grim, and Summer ended up unleashing her silver eyes upon the few survivors. If the situation wasn't so dire, Raven probably would have been more turned on than she already was. Naturally, they all returned to Ashbin, gave their mission report, and got some much-needed rest. Of course, the next day Raven and Crow decided to go out drinking. Crow was still a bit shaken after being swallowed alive, and surprisingly Taeyang and Summer decided to join them. Raven never laughed so hard after watching Summer drink alcohol for the first time. The white cloak-wearing girl practically fell out of her booth. It was hours later when the crazy shit really started to happen, starting with Crow daring Tai to hit on the waitress to get her number. As it turned out, the waitress turned out to be a guy, and Tai got his revenge by throwing Crow out the window. The next thing Raven remembered was standing outside the bar, Crow and Tai wrestling around on the sidewalk like a bunch of boys, Summer clinging onto her, and the bar itself being engulfed in a big ball of fire. "You have really pretty hair," Summer had told her in a drunken haze, playing with Raven's hair as she had leaned up against her. 2 bars later, both of which somehow managed to remain standing, and all for members of Team SDRQ wound up in a hotel room with some cheap whiskey. "It's not what you think, not yet anyway." Summer suggested they play Truth or Dare, which they only managed to convince Raven to do because she was already plastered, and that's when things started to get weird. Needless to say, Raven woke up the next morning completely naked, sore, with Summer drooling on her chest, Tai holding her from being, and Crow somehow holding on to Summer while also halfway falling off the bed. The fact that Raven felt sore in both spots made her shudder at the thought. The rest of the team freaked out, got some hangover medication, managed to hunt down all their scattered clothes, and swore never to talk about that night again. Sadly, that didn't stay true, seeing as it apparently took only that one try to knock Raven up. Summer got away scot-free because apparently she was smart enough to be on the pill, and she'd be lying if she said she hadn't been afraid her kids were somehow her brothers. Yet they came out as blonde-haired screaming pups, who both had a good set of lungs on them, and Raven never felt more complete than she had at that moment. And that's how her drinking made her a family, for as long as it lasted anyway. "You look depressed." Raven glanced up from her glass, scotch if her hazed mind remembered correctly, to find her brother sitting down next to her. "At least now you're not alone in that regard," Raven shot back, draining the rest of her glass in a single shot and motioning for another. "So what do you want?" "What, a brother can't check up on his sociopath of a sister from time to time?" Crow grinned as he ordered the same thing Raven was drinking. They did have similar tastes, after all. "You're single, smell like a homeless guy, and are hanging out with your sister instead of hitting on a girl half your age. What do you think?" Even drunk she could still burn him. It was a gift. "What are you still doing in Vale? Don't you have a tribe of cutthroats and scumbags to look after?" Crow knew he was poking the dragon, but it was the best way to get info out of his big sister. "Maybe I'm keeping an eye on Yang. She is my daughter after all." Crow laughed at that, laughed right in Raven's face, before going stone cold serious. Raven actually felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand right up on edge. She knew how deadly her little brother could really be in a fight, drunk or not. Keep an eye on your daughter or your son, Crow practically hissed the words. Raven's glass shattered in her hands as her deep red eyes suddenly pierced into her brother's. Careful, little brother, don't say anything stupid. While Raven put on an angry facade, mentally she was panicked. If Crow knew, then did that mean Ashbin knew as well? Crow tilted his head back and slowly finished the rest of his glass, pulled out his scroll, clicked on something, before turning the screen to show Raven. There the evidence was, a picture taken not 24 hours ago of Raven and Naruto sitting on the roof catching up. Raven's first instinct was to smash the scroll, followed by Crow's face, but that wouldn't solve anything. Crow was an idiot at a lot of things, but blackmail wasn't one of them. What, not gonna come up with some half-assed lie about how you thought he was dead and only recently found him? I'm a bit underwhelmed, Crow taunted as he slipped the scroll back into his pocket, the tension now noticeably thicker. Does he know? Raven growled out, her previously hazed mind now razor sharp. Who? Tai. Now he was just asking to be punched, but Raven held back. Ashbin, you simple-minded fuck, the man who wanted to turn my son into his own personal weapon, Raven shouted, slamming her hand onto the bar counter and drawing quite a bit of attention. Is that why you left? Why you broke our hearts and left your daughter without a mom? Because you thought Ashbin was going to weaponize a baby? Crow shot to his feet, getting right in Raven's face. You weren't there that day. You didn't see the way he looked at my baby boy. It was the same way he used to look at Summer. You remember, don't you? By this point everyone began to leave the bar, even the bartender. So your solution was to steal him away in the middle of the night, and then tell me, your brother, that he had died at the hands of the Grimm. You showed me a goddamn grave, Raven, a small little grave with my nephew's name on it. Crow slammed his glass onto the ground, his frustration building. Because you would have run to your little master and told him where Naruto was. Crow snapped at that and grabbed Raven by the front of her outfit, picking her up and actually threw her into a table halfway across the bar. He was family. I wouldn't have said shit if you asked me to. I would have lied my ass off, told the old man I couldn't find you. But instead I only find out now when he's practically a grown man. Well, how was I supposed to trust you after you told him about our past? Raven roared back, picking up half the destroyed table and chucking it back at Crow, who managed to dunk just in time. You self-centered bitch. Crow charged at Raven, wanting to beat some sense into her with his bare hands. Traitor! Raven shouted back, grappling Crow and sending them both to the wooden flooring. The elder Branwen siblings rolled around on the floor trying to overpower each other, much like they used to do back in their younger years. Crow somehow managed to get Raven into a chokehold, only to get a solid elbow to the crotch in return. Raven tried to twist herself around and lay into her little brother with metal-covered fists, but a solid punch to the jaw sent her sprawling backwards. More and more they fought, using chairs and tables as makeshift weapons, and eventually they both wound up toppling over the counter they'd originally been sitting at. Bitch! Crow growled as he managed to get to his feet and lay into Raven's side with a few strong kicks, only to be once again nailed right in his balls. Jackass! This time it was Raven who stomped her little brother, only to get her foot caught a few seconds later and dragged back to the ground. Fuck you! A glass bottle had slowly been shook to the very edge of the shelf it had been placed on, until it eventually fell off and hit Raven in the back of the head, followed by smacking Crow right in the face. The two warring siblings groaned in pain as they slowly moved apart, with Raven sitting up against the counter while Crow leaned up against the cabinets below the shelves. Sitting in between them was a large bottle of gin. Both the siblings spotted it at the same time. Crow managed to get to it first, trying to pry the lid off with his teeth but failed miserably. Give it here! Raven snatched the bottle away, hooked the cap in between the plates in his armor, and pulled it free. Crow went to take it back but Raven pressed it to her lips before he could and down a few gulps. Her face twisted in annoyance, followed by a few coughs, before she finally handed it to Crow. Gah, that shit is disgusting, Raven spat, having never really liked the taste of the stuff in large amounts. Now who's the? Crow handed her back the bottle. At least I'm meant to have one. Fuck you. Silence soon enveloped the brother and sister once more, their anger mostly gone, and instead was replaced by simple unease. They waited until the entire bottle was gone before speaking, and it was Crow who broke the ice. You really think I'd betray you guys for Ashbin? Crow asked, wondering if he had actually earned that kind of response from Raven. I don't know, I was scared at the time and didn't know who to trust, especially after me and Ty got into it later that night. He was all for having the bastard get involved. Do you really think I'm a self-centered bitch? Sometimes, yeah, but not when it comes to your family. Crow let out a tired sigh before he looked up to meet his sister's eyes. I just wish I could have been a part of the kid's life. Or as much as my semblance allowed anyway. Our family is so fucked up. You're the one that had a foursome with your brother. Gah, how can you still bring that up? Crow smirked and reached up above for another bottle. Because unlike you, I still don't remember a damn thing after getting back from that mission. Well, let's hope my kids don't take after me then. Raven kicked the shelf and caught the bottle that fell off it, cracking it open the same time Crow opened his. What's that supposed to mean? Crow asked as they clinked bottles, taking long swings respectively. I'm saying Yang kissed Naruto on the cheek, and it wasn't the brother-sister kind of kiss either. Ty's gonna freak. Yep. Crow looked around a bit before an idea suddenly popped into his head. Hey, wanna go mess with Glinda, like back in the old days? My dear little brother, Raven grinned as she slowly got to her feet and held out her hand for Crow. I love your ideas. The Branwen siblings stumbled out of the bar together, with Crow's arms slung over Raven's shoulder as they walked. They wouldn't make it more than a few blocks away before passing out on a random roof. The hangovers they would experience would be legendary. Naruto sat on his lone bed, leaning up against the headrest with his knee propped up and a textbook in his hands. The rest of the day had gone by rather boringly, aside from a few questions his teammates had about his life prior to Beacon and the way he acted in class. In the end it wound down to some more team bonding, discussing some early morning training ideas, and doing some boring homework. Hey, you still up? Yang's voice broke Naruto's concentration, making him look up to find his partner shuffling herself over to him. Sorry, did I wake you? Naruto asked as he sat up a little straighter, only to watch as Yang flopped down next to him on his already small bed. Can't sleep, too cold. Yang shivered a bit as she sleepily moved closer to Naruto. It's almost 95 degrees in here, Naruto said with a flat look, having resorted to an orange tank top and sleeping shorts just to stay cool. Still cold? Then go snuggle up with Blake. Too lazy, Yang shot back, resting her head on Naruto's chest and finding herself strangely at ease doing so. She's one bunk below you. Naruto himself felt oddly relaxed. Naruto. Yeah? There's a smoking hot girl using you as a pillow. Shut up. Whatever. Naruto tossed his book onto the ground, leaned over to turn out his light, before properly laying down in his now occupied bed. The young Branwen was out just a few seconds later, pulling Yang closer as his mind slowly slipped away. Glinda Goodwitch liked to think of herself as a morally good persona, which was why she felt so sick doing her current task. The cameras she'd ordered installed were now set up to her personal scroll and everything going on in Naruto Uzumaki's room was under her watchful gaze. Ashbin had given her strict instructions to only report anything that looked odd, mostly any evidence as to if Mr. Uzumaki was anything more than a simple new student. Glinda sighed as she lay in her own bed, dressed in only a nightshirt, and watched Ms. Xiaolong climb into bed with her team leader. She could bust them right now, seeing as it was against school policy for anyone to share a bed, but that would reveal the cameras. Well, Glinda bit her lower lip as she observed the two blondes. They do look good together. What if Naruto is the son of Raven Branwen Ruby? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoyed this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel, and leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.